friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average babes come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. A place where being yourself is the ultimate goal, where your opinion, your story, and your individual experience matters. Join me, your host B, and my guests for real and raw talks every week, laying it all out there so we can all help each other learn more, grow deeper, and evolve collectively. Now keep in mind, as a disclaimer, no one here is an expert and no one is giving any advice. This is strictly our opinions, thoughts, feelings, and for entertainment purposes only. Now with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Be Real Babe podcast. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for stopping by the show today. I hope that you have a good time. And if you're a returning listener, watcher, supporter, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for coming back time and time again. For those that don't know me, my name is Brandy. I am the host of the show. And today you guys are on episode 185, Being Real About Spirituality with Sarah. As always, guys, you know I'm coming in with a fire fucking episode. And as usual, it's another 2-hour banger of just good vibes, energy, real talk, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear this one. Let me know what you think. But before we do that, I just want to remind you, if you are watching on YouTube and Rumble, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Please go do that now. I'm going to give you a second. I'm not going to be done talking, but if you are on Spotify or Apple, you can also follow me and turn on notifications. Leave a review if you're feeling like you love your babe, because that helps me so much. Actually, the impressions on Spotify lately have been insane, so thank you guys so much for your support. It freaking kills me every single time that play count goes up. It seriously, I'm just shocked. I am shocked. At the end of the season, I'm going to tally up all the views across all the platforms and let you guys know. I'm really excited to see what that looks like, because I have, and I don't know if I've said this on the show, but I definitely have hit over 15,000. Possibly by the time this launches, maybe we'll be closer. I will be closer to 16. We'll see. I'm shocked that that's just on Spotify. So I want to compare Rumble, YouTube, and Spotify and see where we're at. And just a reminder, guys, the YouTube is the new YouTube. Please get yourself off the old one. Go to the new one. Haven't posted there for 6 months. Please help me. That's attached to a hacked account. But if you want to find me on social media, you can find me on Instagram and Pinterest at the Be Real Babe podcast. And you can find me on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. Okay, I said all the things I have to say. Please go like, subscribe, turn on notifications, do all the things that help me as a tiny podcast Canadian creator trying to get out there, fighting big tech. You guys know the stories. You know how shadow banned we can be. So that helps a lot. And you guys, I want to cry, but I'm not going to. And just thank you again for your support and your love and everything. If you have a story, if you want an episode, hit me up. I am organizing season 8 right now, which is going to be taping in August, airing in September in the fall. So just absolutely blessed with how many guests and stories I have to come yet for the season. And already what looks to be season 8 is going to be magical. So make sure you get in on it, girl. Tell me your story. Tell me your things. Let me know your experience, or boy, or they, whatever. I'm open to everyone. You're a fucking cat. Bring it on. I haven't had a cat on the show yet. Let's do it. Anyways, guys, sidetracking. Amazing episode with Sarah. I don't know that you guys are ready. Okay, you're ready. Let's go. All right, babes, it's time to get on to the show. And with me today, I have a very special guest joining me for her first time. I'd like to welcome Sarah to the show. Hey, babe, how's it going?
Hi, beautiful. It is going absolutely phenomenally well. I'm super honored to be here today.
I'm so excited. And girl, your story this morning just like had me. I was already super grateful that we're gonna have this
Oh,
today, but then that's what I kind of woke up and opened up to, and I was just like got like
mm,
chills and goosebumps, and I was like, and she's coming on the show today, and it just like
oh,
completely had my vibe going this morning, just because I have those moments like you do, and when you share
yeah,
them, they kind of, when other people share their deep moments where they have to share it with others, it just hits deeper, you know. And I
yeah.
feel like you are just emanating that
Mm,
like gratitude right now.
thank you. Yeah, thank you for that reflection. And yeah, it's just been a super special morning for me. And just lately, as a whole, I just feel like I'm at this very, very special and sacred place in my journey. And that's why I'm sharing it, right? Is because my hope in the work that I do and just as a whole for everybody as a collective is that every single human being gets to experience this.
Yeah.
And that for me is just this state of being in this place in my life and my personal journey where I just truly feel so happy in this moment right here, right now, not because of anything. And with that said, obviously, I have so much to be grateful for, and I do have things
Totally.
to look forward to.
Yes.
And the happiness and the joy that I feel moment by moment now is just there. It just
Mhm.
is. It just exists because of everything that has led to this. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I just this morning, especially after facilitating a super powerful ceremony last night and receiving some of the beautiful messages that I got to wake up and open my phone to this morning, I was just weeping, just
I love
weeping.
it. I love
Yeah.
that so much. And that's, yeah, you could feel it. Like it's felt. And I love those individuals. And I think we said that before, like that feeling across social media. And you could feel that. That's wild. Like, so I'm excited for when we
Yeah.
meet in real life because the energy I'm sure is going to
Oh,
be top notch. But we could do
me
this for
too.
now. Yeah. So that's amazing. And I was watching that too last night. And again, like just, you love to see the people that you care about feeling good and being happy. And like you said,
Yeah.
once you figure that out for yourself, you want to unlock that and help other people, whether that's by coaching them or just sharing it, right? So let's start from the beginning.
Yeah.
So who is Sarah? What does Sarah doing? How did Sarah get to where she is now, and why B is a huge fan?
Hmm. Well, that is a loaded question.
I know, sorry. Okay,
Just like
let's
I
hive notes, Cole's notes of who Sarah is. Sorry.
like who is Sarah alone?
Mhm.
I'm like, "Oh my goodness, like this is this is an
This
existential question."
okay,
uh
career, location, find
yeah.
you on socials. Let's go with the basics.
Okay, so who am I right now as this present version of me?
Yes.
My name is Sarah Connolly. What I do for work, which feels very funny for me to even term it as work because it's my passion. I am
Yeah.
blessed to be able to live out my passion in this life. And I wear many hats in doing
Yes.
that. Part of that is what I call a reclamation of soul guide or a mentor, if you will. And in that work, I really help people reclaim their soul. And what I mean by that is that I believe each and every one of us comes to this earth as a sacred soul with a immense purpose. And just over the course of childhood and social and cultural conditioning and all of the things that we endure in this lifetime, we lose parts of that and we leave parts of our soul behind. And so, what I do in my mentorship work and in the energy work that I do is I simply act as a conduit and a guide for people to be able to reclaim those parts of themselves, to call those parts of themselves back home so that they can step into their true self, what some might call the higher self. I don't like the
Mhm.
hierarchical terms of higher self, present self, but we can call it
Fair.
higher self for
Yep.
just logistics
Lack of
sake.
better term. Yeah.
Hmm.
For visual
Right.
representation. Yeah.
So that is my goal with all of my work, is to
Totally.
help people step into their true essence and start living as the expression of their true self, of their highest expression of self, so that they can then come to this place
Mhm.
of experiencing life as this living, waking existence of magic and miracles and ecstasy and joy and bliss and gratitude and love that is literally alive in every single moment when we actually reach this state of growth, healing, and expansion and openness within our own being to be able to
Mhm.
receive that and have eyes and ears and a heart open
Mhm.
to experiencing that in its totality.
Yeah, and if is it fair to say we have a lot of different experiences or outside sources that affect that. And as like you
Mm-hmm.
said, as we grow up, in childhood, we're just so carefree and we're asking all the questions and we're so creative and we're imaginative. And as we grow up, like you said, social constructs, all the type of constructs that are out there,
Yeah.
change that depending on your family structure, your environment, where you are in the world, your social, like lots of things, factors go in there, and then we
Yeah.
start piling on these, what would say, like narratives, like would you say, I
Yeah.
guess what we want to get into is like limiting beliefs of like what
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't be or who you shouldn't be, or maybe beliefs of who you should be, whether that's from your parents or, all these things. Then you get into adulthood and then you're kind of like, okay, now I'm an adult and I am like a walking anxiety plant and I'm scared of everything. And how did I get here? And when is the adult switch being turned on? And,
Yeah.
where's the more adult? And then you start having like this existential dread. And, I think we all go through that. And then you have to have that, like, okay, hold on, slow down, hold
Hmm.
up, and you get caught up in. I think one of the beautiful things that you've taught me is to slow down, which is crazy because
Mm,
obviously I'm hyper right now. So that's obviously, it's not that I'm not learning that. I think there's a
yeah.
difference too, like, a high vibe and like taking those moments in time because I'm so hyper to just be like, what's going on
Hmm.
inside, girl? And so, like, that's one huge thing I've always taken from you, is just to like slow down, stop racing.
Mm,
Like, things will happen in time. So for me, like for you, even just like showing up online, you're mentoring people, and then you have kind of services that you facilitate those things too, right?
yeah.
So kind of all around beauty here. So let's start at the beginning of your journey into coming in here. Were you always, would you deem spiritual, or would you say you were, maybe more religious or atheist turned spiritual? How did
Mm.
that present itself for you?
So, if you want my really existential, like woo woo answer to this question,
Yes, always.
I believe that we're all spiritual. I believe that we are born a spiritual soul. And again, as with everything else, I believe that some point in our journey, usually over the course of a long, gradual period of time, we lose that. Or some of us do, right? Some don't. Some have the blessing of staying in touch with that. And for a great majority of my life, I do think that I still maintain that to some degree. I was blessed to grow up with parents who love nature. And so I spent a lot of time in nature as a kid. I went bird watching, I went nature hiking. My mom was always like, "Oh my goodness, look at this flower, look at the moon, look at the stars, look at."
Plant.
And so
Yeah.
now I'm for sure, I just say I'm a look at the moon girl. I'm a look at the sunset
Yes.
girl, and I always will be because I had the gift of growing up with mentors and role models who showed me those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
same thing with animals, and just the acknowledgement of animals having spirits, plants having spirits, and the interconnectedness of all things. That was something that came very naturally to me because of how I was raised. And I will forever and for always be grateful for that. And holistic nutrition and healing has also been a big part of my path for a long time. I
I love that.
had the blessing and the curse of witnessing and experiencing numerous loved ones battle chronic illness, and I lost 13 loved ones in an 11 period of time. And
Sorry.
so I mean, don't be sorry, right? Because
I know.
honestly, I wouldn't be who I am today without that. And I appreciate the acknowledgement, but I am so deeply grateful for the grief and the death and the dying and the sickness that I witnessed, because that all led me to where I am, and it
Mm,
also showed me what works and what doesn't work, right? And
good
with
point.
that said, that's it. Everyone's path is completely individual. And I shared with you at the beginning before we press record today too that I don't ever believe that I'm right or wrong about anything. I just believe that what I'm sharing is based on my own personal life experience. As with anybody else, we're all just living an emanation of the story or the narrative, as you described,
Yeah.
of our life based on our experiences. And
Yes.
so, just a preface to everything that I
Yes.
share today. And so, yeah, I would say I've always been spiritual to some degree, and that has been amplified a millionfold in the last, I would say, probably 7 years,
Mm.
as I have really slowed down
Yes.
to discover what matters to me and what doesn't matter to me, and what this life is about for me, and what purpose means, and what spirituality actually means to me. And I think a lot of people think spirituality is based in religion, and I actually
Mm,
think quite the opposite. I think spirituality comes from the soul. I think it is innate, right? It is the essence of knowing who we are, and that there is something so much greater than us, call that God or source or creator, what
mm,
have you. And we are also that. God
Yes.
lives within us, source and creator live within us. We are connected to everything and everyone. And so spirituality is a way of being, spirituality is a way of living life. Religion is a construct and it has rules. And sadly, I find religion often imposes a lot of judgment on your sexuality, your sexual expression, how you show up in relationships, and if you're
Mhm.
devoted, deeply devoted to a relationship before intimacy and children and all of these things. And spirituality, in my definition of spirituality, does not have any of that. Spirituality is the acknowledgement that because we are all connected, because you are an emanation and a mirror image of me, that I don't have the right to judge you because you are actually just reflecting back to me things that I'm being invited to witness within myself.
Mm, yes, that's so awesome. That's so powerful too. It's hard sometimes, so
Of course,
being
of
that
course.
mirror.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm sure your DMs have been like, our comments have always been sassy, and that's what I'll always go in if I see somebody kind of attacking someone in that way. And I'm like, yo, yo, yo,
yeah.
look at your lens too, that you're looking at it with someone else, right? Are you looking at it through your own experience lens and having your own
Mm-hmm.
prejudice and bias? And that's fine. You can have that. I think it's what you do with those feelings. Like, I like the
Yeah.
comment, like the understanding that, judgment, I think, is not a bad thing. It's the intention of everything, like if you're going to have a thought and then you're going to say that and treat someone different with that thought and that prejudice, that's not good. But like,
Mm-hmm.
say if I'm comparing, where I want to be in my life and I'm like, I'm not quite where I want to be health wise, where can I be better? And not shameful judge, but like improvement judging, like a
Mm-hmm. That's
positive
more of
judgment,
like criticism, critique, and
Yeah, yeah,
curiosity rather than
totally.
judgment. Judgment, I
Yeah,
think, is a
fair.
projection, whereas criticism and curiosity
Yeah.
is acknowledging, like, okay, like this is what I'm seeing or experiencing, and there's also probably something else here for me to
Mhm.
witness and to navigate. And there's probably
Yeah.
another truth that may not feel resonant for me right now, but maybe it actually is in higher service of who I want to become.
Yeah. And then it starts stirring, and then it's like a seed is planted almost, right? And then somewhere down the
Mm-hmm.
line, it'll pull that thought up again. You're like, hey, and then I feel like that's where everything starts, is that thought, right? And of change. And maybe I don't like this about myself. But I think that's beautiful that you say, because I think people get confused. Like you said, like spirituality is like a different religion. It's like you could be
Mm-hmm.
Christian or Catholic or, Jewish and spiritual. And it's like, I'm kind of with you, where I kind of think spirituality is a step above that, let's say. So in my mind, like you said, we're all one, it's all source. And these individuals that say like Jesus, that actually existed in real human form, I feel like they understood. They were leaders that understood energy source, the universe, and the power of individuals and community and all that, and tried to share that, and then I think you get some cult leaders that are like, I know everything and drink the juice, where they get a little
Mm-hmm.
too drunk on that. But true good leaders, I think, understood that, like individuals like yourself, and are like, I need to share this with everybody else and get this out there, because maybe you broke through that moment, or like you said, you were always spiritual, but 7 years ago it kind of like amplified. And I think all of us kind of have that moment. I think a lot of us
Yeah.
happened through the pandemic. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
hold on, smack me out of my life. This is it. They're, like for so many reasons. Me, it was with birth control. That was my like, okay, birth control is supposed to help me prevent
Yeah.
having babies, but not for the rest of my life. What is going on here?
Yeah.
Something's not lining up. So with that 7 years ago, can you walk me through it? Was there a specific situation, moment of time, like were you on the floor crying, eating Ben and Jerry's, and you're like, this is it. I'm gonna start meditating and doing sound bowls, or like what was that moment for you? Do you have one, or was it just collective?
Yeah, it wasn't specific to a single moment. It was a series of moments where after having spent so many years of my life following the proverbial checklist that society and conditioning as a whole had told me that, okay, like this and this and this and this will make you successful and happy. And so I had gone to university, originally intending to go to medical school, decided kind of halfway through, like had one of those moments where I was like, is med school like really aligned for me? Or am I going after that because I think that a 2 letter prefix in front of my name gives me a status symbol and some sort of hierarchical acknowledgement in society? And with that
Yeah.
said, I always knew I wanted to help people heal, but I just came to this recognition that having doctor in front of my name was just not in resonance. If had gone down that path, it for sure would have been for materialistic, egoic reasons.
Yeah.
And also, I did not ever want to be a general practitioner and just deal with stuffy noses and sore throats. So if I had gone down that path, I would have specialized. And after doing a 4-year bachelor's degree, thinking about another minimum of 8 years of school, the light bulb moments of like, okay, well, where are you spending your time? Like, is another 8 to 12 years of school going to be spent living a life that feels deeply purposeful and passion
Mhm.
filled for you? Or is there potentially something else? And so I started getting curious into the other options. And so I found ultrasound at that time. It just came into my field and I loved it because I got to be part of the diagnostic process. I got to actually like be in the room with radiologists and doctors and actually have a say in diagnoses. And I got to spend ample time with patients. And so, as an ultrasound tech, I got to spend typically a minimum of 30 minutes. And then, when I was working in diagnostic and interventional imaging in the hospitals, when we were doing biopsies and procedures, and I was also in the OR, like sometimes I was with patients for hours. And
Yeah.
so, again, a series of these moments started happening where now I had gone down the allopathic medicine route. And I myself was very holistic, which was an
Mhm.
interesting paradox. But again, I was just
That's part of
following.
the journey. That's part of
Yeah.
the journey, right? But it's still, they always say you should always look back and cringe a little bit, and not like in a bad
Yeah.
cringe, but in just being like, girl, I'm so proud of you for growing there. Cause like, but, or those are
Yeah.
moments, like you said, that you can look back and be like, and that was a moment. And that was a moment that
Hmm.
pulled another Jenga piece out of, what I thought I was supposed to be or where I was supposed to be type of thing.
And so, as an ultrasound tech, having the gift of having so much time with each patient, it just naturally began to happen that patients would open up to me about their past, about their trauma, about their health history, about their relationships, and all of these things. And at the time, for myself, I was studying a lot of holistic nutrition, a lot of energy work based in the chakras, a lot of Joe Dispenza, all this kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And then certain things just began to ping like, oh, wow, all of these women, or I shouldn't say all, many of these women who are coming in with infertility, with endometriosis, with ovarian cysts, with ovarian tumors, with
Mhm.
all of these things where the hospital is like, oh, well, let's just take out your uterus and your ovaries, or oh, let's just put you on birth control, or oh, let's just put you on this pharmaceutical drug. These women were opening up to me about things like sexual trauma and
Mhm.
repressed emotions. And if you know anything, for those of you listening, about the chakras, that is all sacral chakra. Our sacral chakra, which is our second chakra, is our sexuality and our emotion. And it's one of our first three chakras as well, which is where the majority of our childhood trauma and our deeply repressed emotions are stored. And so it was just those puzzle pieces fitting together time and time again. Like, things with anger and repressed grief very often manifest as breast cancer, which is something I saw a lot too. Liver can also be anger. And just everything just started to come into my mind's eye. And as with anything in life, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so
And it's like you're like, it's everywhere. Once you figure out Hollywood, you're just like, damn it, I just want to watch a fucking movie without thinking, huh, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like you're like, sometimes
yeah.
I just want to go back and be ignorant. Like, please let me just watch a Disney movie without being like, those motherfuckers. Just kidding. But yeah.
Yeah. And so with that, in addition to me kind of starting to actually tap back into my gifts of intuition and insight and clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience, all of these things that I had repressed, because I was afraid of judgment, I was afraid of not fitting in, I was afraid I was crazy, all of these things when I was younger. And so, as an ultrasound tech, there would be times where I knew the history, or I knew what it was before I even put the probe down or before I even asked the question. And so that, going hand in hand with witnessing how the medical industry is so deeply failing us as a whole. And very rarely ever hearing a patient say, my doctor actually asked me about how my sleep is, how my nutrition is, what my stress levels are like, what I do for myself for joy, for play, for
Mhm.
spirituality, how my relationships are, what my stress
Mhm.
levels are like, what emotions are coming up for me. Like, never are these questions asked, or rarely.
Very
Again,
rare.
I
Yeah.
can't say
There's
all, I can't
some.
say never.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah.
I can't.
Majority.
I'm gonna call myself out on these blanket statements. But anyways,
That's fair.
very
Yeah.
rarely do I hear doctors in allopathic general medicine asking these kinds of questions. Which, in my personal opinion, all disease and chronic illness is rooted in trauma. It is rooted in toxic loads, so the toxins that we take on from our external environment,
Mhm.
and repressed emotions, and then finally parasites. And parasites
Mhm.
are something I've been learning about more recently, but I truly believe if we healed our trauma,
Mhm.
liberated our repressed emotions, and really took the time to detox our body from heavy metals, toxins, and parasites, I actually personally do not believe that disease would exist.
I agree. I agree. There's something up. Like, is that something too? Like, for example, like cancers. When maybe at the beginning of when you were becoming an ultrasound tech, I would imagine at the same time I was talking to Torva in my last episode, it was like 7 years ago, 1 in 4 people had cancer. Now the
Mm-hmm.
number's 1 in 2. So
Mm-hmm.
can someone please tell me how we've gotten better and we've
Mm-hmm.
progressed and da 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 da? Again, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not any of those things. So a common folk like me, of course, we're not going to understand. But the math's not mathing here. How are we advancing in so many things, but this is not getting better? I would say, okay, let's have a plot twist because whatever we're looking at,
Mm-hmm.
whatever we're trying to do, it's not working. So what
Mm-hmm.
else can we do? And instead of honoring those individuals, they're in Canada specifically attacking those services and modalities and trying to
Mm-hmm.
shut them down so that allopathic is the only way to do it. But again,
Mm-hmm.
they're not always doing good. They've saved people's lives. So I'm not going to take that away.
Yeah.
Again, like you said, not all doctors. There are some that do care, but
Yeah.
a lot of them aren't taught to, educated to, don't go back to school. Myself personally, infertility issues, I've never had a doctor ask me anything other than like, you want to be on birth control? What kind of birth control you want to be on? And you're like,
Mm.
16. You're like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, you're in pain? Oh, here's some Tylenol 3. Okay, so cool. A Tylenol 3 addiction at 16 because I'm on birth control and that's not helping. So you must just be crazy and in pain. Just take these Tylenol 3. Well, I don't know what food was at 16. I don't think I understood what water was unless it was in a mixed, like for maybe iced tea or something. Like I wasn't necessarily an active kid. I did not have, there's lots of, but again, no one's asked those things. Instead, it's like, here's some medicine. And then that ended up hurting my liver. And then I was real angry. So that doesn't help, you know? And it's like
Yeah.
all of those things add up. And I get really tired of people saying, well, it's FDA or Health Canada approved and it's safe and all these things. And my argument back to that is, have they tested all these things on an individual altogether?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could say that your shampoo is fine and your conditioner is fine and your hairspray and your makeup and your perfume and da 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 da. Those are all fine individually. What happens when you put those all together and you're
Yeah.
not moving your body and fleshing those things out? And then you're just work and you're not stopping for a second and you know what I mean? Like we're not taught that all those things add up will lead you to these places a lot quicker. And if we maybe looked at
Mm-hmm.
these things, it wouldn't be such a race to disease and illness. And I personally
Absolutely.
want to learn younger than older. I don't want to be 40,
Mm-hmm.
50. Well, I'm getting in my 40s soon, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be, maybe more of like 50s. It's like as you age, you're like, oh, 40 sounds so old now. I'm like, fuck, it's around the corner. When I get to my 50s, because that's so far away, like you're going to have to address these things
Yeah.
either in illness or in prevention. And that's what I think we're missing is prevention of all of
A
these
hundred
things.
percent.
Would you feel
100%.
that way? And
Yeah, and that was one of my biggest
yeah.
frustrations with the industry as a whole, is how much of this sickness could be truly prevented and eradicated. And as you were saying before, also like any of the holistic and energetic methods that try to really speak out about ways that you can cure or prevent these kinds of things, they do very often get silenced. And I mean, I even find myself treading very carefully around the topics of cancer and chronic illness on my own podcast and social media, because you get silenced and shadow banned really fast. But I will just say, from personal experience and from the individuals that I have worked with, I have now worked with people who have had chronic illness and infertility and endometriosis and cancer and all of these things. And for anyone listening, there are options for you that are outside of the traditional system, that I'm not going to sit here and tell you that they're easier, because a lot of them go hand in hand with working with plant medicine and actually returning to the earth and doing deep cleanses of the physical and the energetic body. Because cancer especially, and any chronic illness, it is energetic. It's an energetic buildup. Cancer specifically is the actual energy of death, and it's what we call bad Shinon. There's good Shinon and bad Shinon, and that is energy that moves through the meridians of the body and builds up over time in years of our life. And I mean, we could do a whole podcast as a whole on this, but there are so many ways that we can address that Shinon, that energy in the body, without immediately resorting to, oh, let's cut the body part out, or oh, let's intravenously infuse you with toxins that are going to absolutely be savage to your liver, to your kidneys, to your pancreas. I mean, I watched both of my parents go through cancer. I watched my mother is still here, and she still deals with the effects of chemo and radiation. And so
So
it's
brutal.
just, I mean, we need a change, right? And so,
Yeah.
anyways, like circling back to your question, like these moments, some of them smaller and some of them what you might call tower moments in my journey, where time and time again, something inside me was just like, okay, this is not working for the collective, and this is simultaneously now no longer working for me. This is not how I wish to live my life. And that, interestingly enough, that's a thought that I remember thinking even at the age of 4, 5, 6, watching my parents deal with chronic illness, and also watching how they had worked so hard. They were both entrepreneurs, both had multiple jobs and businesses. They had worked so hard with this vision of, oh, we're gonna retire and then enjoy our life. And I remember being like 5 years old and being like, huh?
Fuck
Like,
that.
what? What,
I
like,
don't
you
want
mean
this.
when I'm like 25, I can't be here like building sandcastles and dancing naked? Like,
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that life. Like, this does not make
Cancel.
sense to me, that you are all working so hard for somebody else. Like, the majority of you are working for somebody else who's telling you what to do, so that you can get to 60 or 70, and at that time you hope that you're going to enjoy your life. But oh, shocker, you get to that age or even before that age, and I mean, go figure, you're sick because you have lived your life for somebody else, for other people, self sacrificing your purpose, your passion, and your soul for a world that tells you to be everything but who you truly are.
Totally, absolutely. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. And I mean, everyone's circumstance is always going to be different, and there's different seasons for life, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it does make me sad, like you said, what spirituality is like for me, what that means is like, what's my purpose here? It's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
I have a job, and I'm a fiance, and I'm a podcaster, and I have cats, and I live in Kelowna. What is that doing? What is that
Yeah.
doing for my spirit? What is that doing for my soul? Like, and for me, I'm always kind of like a what if person. Like, I don't know if God is real, but what if he is? Okay. So I'm
Mm.
just going to be like, you know what? I'm just going to be good, and I'm not going to be a shitty person. And maybe I don't follow every single guideline that a religion has put out for me. But
Yeah.
to your point, like, I don't believe that's what God truly wanted. I think that
Mm.
that was taken over by some egotistical people, and and although
Yeah.
it's really great to have faith and all that, and I think it's beautiful to hold yourself to a standard, it also holds you to a belief that won't let you see sometimes anything else. And so that's
100%.
where I really love thinking of God as like, as us, as you, as me, as we all are, as just a powerful, and a, you know, obviously Jesus was a person, and maybe these really big people in the world, they understood that in different religions,
Mm-hmm.
and then they started sharing that, and that's why it's a little bit different everywhere in the world, but the core pieces are still kind of the same of all of it. And this is where I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand why everyone in different religious cultures fight, like I do, but at the same time I'm like, if we could just like zoom out for a second
Yeah.
and let's Cole's notes all these religions for the most part, okay, for the most part, it's all like, you know, kind of the same, being good to the neighbor, honoring everyone, coming together,
Yeah.
you know, again, how cults start, so I understand how dangerous that can be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's just go live on the land in the commune, and then it's like 2 months later, it's like everyone's naked and everything's good and everyone's sleeping together, and all of a sudden drink the Kool-Aid. Like, what did I sign up for, you know?
Mm.
But I think it's when we start putting the binaries and the boundaries and all the things like
Yeah.
that, that's where there's turmoil, and that's where I think you have to look inside and look at those constructs and decide what that feels like for you. And as you start breaking through them and you start, you know, seeing world in different place, like you said, once you see it, you don't stop seeing it. And then
Yeah.
you'll meet someone else and you're like, oh, I'm so enlightened and I'm so spiritual. And then all of a sudden something will happen, or you'll meet someone that like triggers the fucker mirrors. You're like, there's some work I
Mm.
have to do there, right? And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
all a part of it. And you shouldn't have shame for it. You should like lean in. So
Yeah.
speaking to that, 2 years ago, I think it was you had posted that you weren't drinking on Canada Day or something,
Mm.
alluding to not feeling aligned with doing that
Yeah.
for multiple reasons that you had. And I remember thinking, fuck you, Sarah. Like, not like that, but like,
Yeah. I
this
mean,
is the first time
if it
that
was
I
like that, I would not
yeah,
be
like,
offended.
no, but you know what I mean? But I was just like, it was perfect moment because I was starting to understand from you that it was a good time to then have that conversation of why did that bother you? And you had said that in the
Mm-hmm.
slide. And I was like, okay, she's opening it up. And I just had to say to you, and I was like, girl, this not bugs me, but this is bleeping something in me here to
Yeah.
respond, not in a negative to you, but
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to feel okay with that because this is the first time after 2 years of being bullied for speaking out about everything with COVID and the vaccine that I actually feel like celebrating life right now. And it has nothing
Mm-hmm.
to do with Canada and all of those things. And it was like, then that moment I was like, again, I don't need to ask her to validate what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
it was a great moment of you being like, that's okay.
Yeah.
That is fine for you. And you were just so sweet about it. We just had such an organic
Mm-hmm.
conversation that I believe because of that conversation 2 years ago, I have been 6 months sober this year.
Wow.
And not necessarily like that was the moment. And I'm not a big drinker, guys. I'm a toker.
Yeah.
We all know I'm a stoner here. We know I'm a huge chronic. That's can't alcohol's never really been my thing, but social construct, being in the Okanagan, you know, I have. And I remember thinking, my girl's coming up, we're gonna have fun. And I was like, Sarah, you just put a cloud on my drinking day. And I was like, no, Sarah did not do that to you. She
Yeah.
is mirroring something that you don't feel aligned inside. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And she's giving you an opportunity to talk to her about it. Take that opportunity and be kind, and don't bowl in a china shop.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of your lens and look it through hers and see what she has to say. And I grew so much that in December before Christmas, I got like kind of drunk and I was like, this isn't for me. I want
Yeah.
to take a break for at least till summer. And it was like, okay, April. And then it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, May. And now I'm like, shit, I got 2 weeks until I hit 6 months in June, like Canada Day. That's ironically going to be the day that I decide to have a few drinks with my friends. But planting those seeds,
I love that you just
you
said that because
don't know
that
where
is
it's going to
exactly
go.
what I was going to say. I
Right.
said,
And so it's like that.
yeah.
I just wanted to bring you that 2 year kind of moment around
Oh,
that you could say something 2 years ago. We had a beautiful conversation. It resonated. I was like, this is cool. But I didn't like stop consciously or subconsciously. I didn't stop. And
mm,
I don't know if that is the reason, but it was that first flag for me to being like, you know, booze doesn't align with you.
yeah.
But I wasn't ready to live that yet and fully honor that. And now I'm like,
Yeah.
cool. Wineries, yeah, I'm gonna do that. We want the pictures, we want the winery. I love learning. I love supporting local, you know, they are local businesses. I do want to support the
Yeah.
Okanagan. Being around my friends, having a few sips of the wine, that feels in line to me. Going to the
Mm,
beach and having a beer or having one at dinner doesn't feel aligned with me anymore. I'm taking mocktails, you know, like,
yeah.
so thank you. And just know that like those little nuggets and seeds that you've planted, even a couple
Mm,
years later, are sprouting. So that
mm.
was my little full moment of being like, that
Oh,
was when I really like fell in love with Sarah.
oh. Well, firstly, I just want to acknowledge you for the way that you did approach that conversation, because I do remember it very well. And the fact that you were able to say, okay, I'm triggered and I'm not going to go on the attack, but instead I'm going to actually hold up the mirror that is being shown to me, and I'm going to get curious and open up a conversation, right? Like that
Yes.
speaks volumes of who you are and where you are and your willingness to stay curious and to continue to grow and evolve. And I absolutely love that you brought up the planting the seeds, because as you were speaking, the phrase, and this is something I try so hard to live my life by day, is to never underestimate the power of planting a seed, right? And we can never dictate whether those seeds germinate and sprout and flourish, but the act of planting the seed, that is really just doing our due diligence to say, okay, here, like, this is something that feels true for me. This is what I've
Mhm.
learned along my path. This is something that feels resonant for me to share. And those with eyes and ears and hearts open to receive it, if it
Mhm.
resonates for them, that seed will plant and germinate. And if it doesn't, then it's just going to be a fallen seed, and that is okay, because
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's not my right or my responsibility to change the trajectory of somebody else's path, right? Like, you
Mhm.
were
Mhm.
meant to drink for as many years as you did and to have those experiences because they taught you lessons that you
Yeah.
were meant to learn. They added,
Totally.
I'm sure they added good times
Lots
and
of fun
value for you
and
as
bad
well.
times. Very good times.
Oh, of course. And I mean,
Yeah.
the quote unquote bad times, I'm
Yeah.
sure you learned from those in some way, shape,
Yeah.
or form, whether it was
We don't like
subconscious or
Fireball.
conscious.
We don't like Fireball.
That's fair. Yeah.
But to your point earlier, like the good or the bad, it's just like, that que sera, like it is. It just, once you get
Yeah.
to the point, it's like, yeah, obviously, it's hard losing people. It's hard for the bad, heavy experiences. But
Yeah.
like you said earlier, if you don't have them, you don't get to be the person you are. I remember when I first started my job, my career now, and he is now my boss, actually, ironically. And this is the first time I've actually had like somewhat of a stranger, let's say coworker, say this to me. And he was like, "You're super positive. You've been
Mm.
through shit." And I was
Mm.
just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's like, you just know that that's not
Yeah.
that, like, you've dealt with it, but you don't want to be, like, you have the choice. Like,
Mm.
I've lived in such a victim mentality, and I'm still there in a lot of places. I have a lot to learn.
Mm.
Actually, I was kind of giggling before I told the girls yesterday. I'm like, I might just lay my limiting belief out to Sarah tomorrow and see how she calls me out. Let's see. uh but like, it's just all baby steps, and I think not having shame in your understanding of yourself and learning is a step that I think holds people back from jumping in and doing this work, because they're like, think that they need to solve everything overnight, or they need
Yeah.
to change who they are tomorrow, or their bad habits. Like, I drink water, but like, sorry, I don't, what, I gotta have my energy drink from some to time. Okay. Like, there's a balance. And like,
Yeah.
I know that that's not good. I'm working on it, but
Yeah.
I think when you shame yourself for not being so great at absolutely everything, it just,
Yeah.
like you said, having those labels of bad and good really puts people in like a funk. And it's
For
like, can it
sure.
just be like, yes, I want to improve, but
Mm-hmm.
I am drinking water, so that's better than,
Yeah.
a year ago, and I didn't, not a year ago, but you know what I mean? So when you're going through these, what advice do you have for people that are just getting into their spiritual journey, when they're like kind of learning all this stuff and they're like, ah, you know?
I mean, you already alluded to part of it is to take things slowly and to acknowledge the small wins, right? Because yeah, this journey of growth, of healing, of spirituality, it's lifelong. Like, we don't reach a destination with it, right? And so if we circle back kind of to the comparison between religion and spirituality as well here, so religion is following the messenger and spirituality is following the message. So
Ooh, I like
mhm.
that. I like
My invitation for those listening is to follow whatever message is coming up for you right now. There's a truth within you right now that is true, that you're silencing or evading. And normally that's just because there's still part of you that is operating at the level of the inner child that is scared, that doesn't have the tools and the emotional awareness and the capacity to hold whatever that may be. But I truly believe that when we are ready to heal something and to face something, it comes up.
Yeah.
So, whatever we're facing, whatever is triggering us, whatever
Mhm.
is challenging us, I always invite myself and others to see that as a compliment to where you are in your path, because
Mm.
the challenge and the grief and the pain and the anger and the uncertainty would not be arising for you if you are not at a level of self and soul that we're ready to face that.
Good point. And it's just like if you would say, and this is where earlier looking at the same things that like spirituality and religion, it's if you kind of take it away, the religion and the spirituality, a lot of the stuff comes back to the same ideas, the same,
Mm,
inner strength and belief and all that kind of stuff and not being perfect and looking within. And I seen this quote the other day, and it was just like every woman that we meet has a little girl inside trying to heal. Let's
yeah.
try and push each other up instead of pushing it down. And I think that's such a good way to look at it, because it's like you said, we're all mirrors, so we're all learning from each other. So I'm always in
Mm,
these moments being like, what can I learn here? Like
mhm,
good, bad, or the other. What how can I improve? How can I be better the next time?
yeah.
I think we big problem is having to have who's right and who's wrong,
Mhm,
instead of always just being like, where did I go wrong and where did I go right? Like where could I have improved and where don't I like myself so much? And
yeah,
I think triggers are good. I think that they,
absolutely.
again, how you deal with them, if you're projecting in other people's DMs
Mhm.
like an asshole, then no. Don't think that, but I think it's intention. My intention with
Yeah,
you that day was to learn.
yeah.
It wasn't to discredit your opinions, your thought, your experiences, or tell you you were wrong or tell me I was wrong.
Mhm,
I wanted to be like, okay, I feel good and excited about this. Now I don't. That is not her fault. Why? Let's figure out why. And then I ended up leaving being like, you know what? I feel really good about that. I feel good. I'm going to go have fun with my friends. And I don't have to like hold this guilt that I was thinking
mm,
that I needed to. Sarah didn't say I needed to hold guilt. So why am
yeah,
I telling her and acting like she did? And so
yeah.
I think that's such a good advice, is taking it slow and having grace with yourself, right?
Mhm,
To a degree. Like, if you're just like, okay, I got to stop eating a chocolate bar every day. And then every day you're like, well, I have this, like, it's like you have to balance yourself between self parenting and then like not being the parent that maybe your bad parent was to you, if that makes sense.
yeah, for sure.
Being a good parent.
Yeah, it's an act of radical responsibility, really, as a whole, when it boils down to it. I mean, I think the second piece of advice I would give that kind of intertwines with that is, don't give your power away to anything or anyone else. And this applies
Mm.
so deeply to the spirituality industry. You mentioned in passing before this kind of spiritual ego that very often comes
Yes.
in at some point in the path. And I will wholeheartedly admit, I for sure had that. I was like, I am better than these motherfuckers over here. Like, look at me all
It's so fun.
transcending and
Yeah.
enlightened. And then I realized, like, whoa, no, like, there are literally no hierarchical positions. There are just
Different.
differences in our
Yeah.
path, right?
I love that.
But
Yes.
when I say don't give your power away, I mean don't give your power away to an organization, to a
Mm.
mentor, to a practice. Like, plant medicine is something that I do a lot of work in, but it's also glorified right now. It's like, oh, go sit in the
Yes.
jungle with ayahuasca, you'll heal all your problems.
Please
Oh,
don't do that.
go do
Yes.
mushrooms, and you'll fix all of your trauma. And yes, plant medicine is a powerful, powerful, powerful healer. It's also not for everybody, and it's also not going to fix you unless you actually do the work to look within and to integrate the teachings. And
Yes.
this applies to anything, like, not only spirituality, but I mean, there's
Mhm.
so much emphasis on different aspects of spirituality. And in essence, you just have to find what works for you. You have to
Yes.
put together the pieces that resonate for you. And my personal spiritual practice, I put that in parentheses for those of you who are listening, not watching, but my personal spiritual practice differs through every phase of my journey. Sometimes my
Mhm.
morning practice is sitting in silent meditation. Sometimes my quote unquote meditation is my Kundalini practice, which incorporates music and movement. Sometimes my meditation is literally being in nature. Sometimes my
Mhm.
meditation is whatever form of movement feels good for me at that chapter in my life. And maybe that is still my bodybuilding workouts. Maybe that is yoga. Right now, dance is a form of
Yes.
meditation and
Big
spirituality
fan.
for me. It is, dance has liberated me physically, emotionally, sexually, and spiritually in ways that honestly I don't think any other definable spiritual practice ever has, right? Like
Yeah.
other things that
Yeah.
people would define as spiritual practices,
Yes.
dance wholeheartedly outweighs all of them in what it has brought me and how much emotion it has allowed me to move through and process and release from my somatic body. And
Yeah.
somatic healing, like allowing energy and emotion and trauma to actually move through and up and out the body, that is such a key piece in trauma work and in healing for every single individual.
I agree. And it's one thing that I was actually funny that you're talking about today because that will be where my limiting belief is. But one thing that I said of what I love about dance is that everyone can do it. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what physical level you have. It doesn't matter what social status you have. It everyone has access to music, and everyone can freely move their body. Whether and I know that as obviously there's a percentage of people again, also not blanket statement, but majority of people, it doesn't matter. Even if you're in a chair, you can still unless again you have the ability. That's a different
Mm-hmm.
conversation, but everyone can do it and everyone can express themselves in different ways that they want to. You can use it for fitness. You can use it as expression. You can use it as a sexual thing. You can use it as like anything. And honestly, my biggest suggestion for anybody, if you ever have anything and you don't know what it is, literally two, three of your favorite songs, either sing or dance them out like you're performing at MTV Music Awards. And I promise you, like maybe if you're in your car, be careful. That's a place that I do it. I'm like, oh, motherfucker, you
Yeah.
are driving. Stop. Like we're the same way. We have like if you're not having a fucking concert in your car, what are you doing? What do you
Exactly.
pay all that money
Exactly.
for? Like this is my concert venue. Okay. There's nobody in there that's watching. It's just a solo concert, but it hypes me up. It hit like I'll have a song that was like at a friend's funeral and they'll immediately just flood my and I used to push that away and then I thought no, that's them trying to talk to you, that's them trying to like give that, and I would just cry
Mhm.
and like and sometimes I'll just feel like I need to cry but I have no reason because I'm happy and
Yeah.
I am like you, I'm not waiting for the next thing to be happy, I'm just
Mhm.
happy and things are happening and
Yeah.
maybe they're a little bit more difficult to deal with like being hacked online or
Mhm.
maybe they're really exciting like getting engaged like but they're all happening but I'm happy.
Yeah.
And then I'll have like I just feel this need and then I'll come home and I'm like, you know what, I don't want to train today but I'm going to go downstairs to my gym and I'm just going to like throw music on and I'll dance and I'll sing and I'll grab like the fucking broom. And I was singing Black Velvet the other day, like that
I love
song
it.
is like the best song to belt out to, like
Yeah.
your grandma listened to that, your mom listened to that, right? And I just and then one of the songs came on for my friends that passed away when I was
Mm.
really younger and I just started bawling but I kept and I just let it happen and I just
Yeah.
because I used to just push it away and then I get so mad at people and I would like not want to talk about people that passed away and not honor them and I was like that is such bullshit, like I should be blessed that I had that time with them. But again, that's like that
Mhm.
mindset of like laxity to gratitude that had a huge change for me when we moved and how grateful do I have to have that time with them that they were here
Yeah.
because I don't get a choice in how long people are here and all those things. I can't control those things, but I can control the
Absolutely.
emotion about them, like you said. And it's just a combination to say sorry because it's hard,
Mhm.
especially when you've lost people, like, especially when you weren't in the understanding and it was like life crushing, right? Like it's still like I'm
Yeah.
not saying you're spiritually enlightened more than losing your mom or dad isn't like gonna be hard, but
Yeah.
I think you can look at it through a different lens is just all I mean. So when it happened to me when I was
100%.
19, I did not see it through a good lens. I was like, what is the universe doing this to me? I fuck everybody, like very
Mhm.
lacking. And then now it's just like, I'm so grateful. And then maybe this is a message for them being like, hey, you're doing good. So I shouldn't push that away. I should let them in and just,
Mhm.
and then after I feel so much better, whether that's dancing for fun or dancing just to be silly, like if you can't sing, like, yes, you can. You're just not going to get paid professionally. There's a difference. Okay. Like that's it. Maybe no one's going to buy your album or buy your tickets to your one card jag concert, but you can all sing and we can all sing. And I think it's so important. And I think if you're fair to say, and I don't know much about chakras, but I would say that that would probably release maybe some things that you're holding there that are being holding you back. And then you
Mhm.
use your voice more once you get that energy out of there. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah. So singing is a massive somatic practice for the throat chakra, which is connected to speaking our truth and showing up in the world as a truth speaker and courageously and just being able to actually use our voice. And I just love this whole conversation about music and dance. And for anybody who really wants to know the science and the psychotherapeutic elements of this, I actually just did an entire podcast with a therapist on this concept of what we call neural nostalgia. And so
Yes,
this is
seen that.
how, yeah, so
I
how
did. I was like, ah.
music, I love it. I love the
Yeah.
synchronicity. So how music can actually take us back into old memories and allow us to heal them. And
Mm,
also in traditional cultures that still practice shamanism and
mm,
cultures that actually have a medicine man or a medicine woman who helps people heal, when you present to that medicine man or medicine woman with any kind of physical or emotional ailment, they ask you a series of 4 questions. Those 4 questions being: when did you stop singing? When did you stop dancing? When did you lose your enthrallment with story? And when
mm.
did you lose your willingness to sit in silence and stillness? And so those
Social
four
media. Just
things,
kidding.
yeah, I mean, girl,
It's hard.
basically all of us
Yeah.
being programmed by
Balance.
these little light
Yes.
boxes in our hands, right?
I say it, but I'm
And
like, I want to get on and talk to all my friends.
yeah, I know. I feel you. I literally
Balance.
have to have my phone in another room or off
Mm.
or on do not disturb when I am doing anything for myself, because it's just,
Yeah.
it becomes so addictive, and it's designed to be that
Mhm.
way, right?
Totally. Totally.
But those
Not bad at that.
elements of singing, dancing, enthrallment in story, meaning either listening to story or telling story. And I think a lot of us forget this, and especially if you don't have kids or if you're not really tapping into that inner child. Like for myself, I don't have children, so I'm not telling stories and I'm not often receiving stories. So that was a big thing that actually came through for me when I read the book Women Who Run with Wolves. That book is potent, as far as like that book itself is medicine, and it is told in the format of stories. And when I read that book, I had this moment go off in my mind where I was just reflecting, like, wow, when was the last time that I actually read a story? Not read something for
Mm.
educational purposes, not read something that was deeply rooted in
Self-help.
science, not read, yeah,
Yeah.
self-help
Yeah.
and all of these other books and podcasts and everything that I was fully immersed in.
Yeah.
That
Just
book was so
fiction.
transformative for me. And then these shamanic teachings kept coming up. And so these are principles and practices that are a requirement for every single one of the individuals who work with me in mentorship and with energy work. Is my reflections for them every single day. Did you sing today? Did you dance today? Did you tell or read or listen to a story today? And did you sit in silence and stillness today?
Fuck yeah. I did all four of those today. Nailed it.
Amazing.
We're
You're on a
doing the
roll.
third one right now. Just
Killing
kidding.
it.
Yes. I was like, yeah, I did. I danced. I sang. I had my whole concert in the car this morning. I was like, as soon as I get in the car, it's a concert.
I
But
love it.
it's
I'm the
and
same.
it's back to like that play though, where people think like play. Like I'm not, and I mean, if you want to sit down and play with Legos, fucking all for it. But
Oh, heck yeah.
I think it's like whatever, like you said, connects you to that. And it's so great that you said that about that nostalgic thing. I'm so glad because I was remembering as you were saying that, I remembered that thought, but I was like, who did I hear that from? It was your podcast on it.
Mhm.
Because I remember thinking, is that's why so many people get caught up in their like teen years to like early 20 music. There's like a lock of that
Yeah.
time that brings you back to a certain time where a lot of growth and bad happens to it. So how beautiful is it then to think it that way and think of a song that you can't listen to, like this reminds me of this time and I was dating this boy and this happened, and then
Yeah.
when you hear it and you can listen to it, is that like an ode to like you've healed from that memory and now that is now like, you're able to heal, and now that time
Mhm.
doesn't bring you so much. I think about songs and I was like, I'm never gonna listen to that again. My ex-boyfriend used to love that song and he cheated on me and da 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 da. And now I'm just like, I'll still listen to Nickelback now because it's Nickelback and we're Canadian.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, but before I couldn't listen to it. Like anytime I heard that, it was
Mhm.
immediate, like brought me to that 18-year-old girl that just found out she got cheated on and like was devastated. And now I'm like, that was a really good thing that happened to me. No offense. If you're listening to
Yeah.
this, wife of my ex-husband, is no shade to you guys, it's part of my journey. But I'm glad that that happened. And like to your point, I'm glad for all the
Mm-hmm.
bad things that have happened to me, because it's literally made who I am as this individual today. So sorry, thanks dad for being an alcoholic. Thanks
Yeah.
ex-husband for not being my forever person. Thanks ex for cheating on me when I was in high school, because it taught me so much, and it brought me into awareness of what real life is, not what I had thought in my mind. And so I feel like now I can listen to those musics, but there's still some songs that, like,
Mm-hmm.
post divorce, I'm like, oof, that was a hard time, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not ready to listen. But I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that with this mindset now, maybe listening to it and being like, girl, you've healed from this, so you can listen to
Yeah.
that song now. Is that like a fair connection?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a
Cool.
massive testament to your growth. Anytime that we can go back and re-experience something that mirrors a time that we were going through grief and hardship, and we don't feel the same gravity to those emotions, it is a testament to the fact that we have healed some of those layers. And as I'm sure you know, grief comes in waves, and grief is a very long process of healing. And I will speak for myself personally, where I am with my own grief journey, is that grief, from what I have been taught and now how I see it, is that grief is a praise to the gods. Grief is a praise to what was. Grief is an honoring of the time that you had with that person, or with that time in your life, with that past version of yourself. Grief is an honoring of the sacredness of time, and of this gift that we have to be alive and to live in this body and to connect with the souls that cross our paths. And so grief is just an emotion that we get the blessing to experience. And so if it comes up, to give yourself full permission to let it come up, because the only thing that is in disservice of ourself and our soul is when grief or anger or any emotion comes up and we repress it. Right. And so acknowledging that you can listen to those songs and that they don't trigger the same emotions. And then also acknowledging those songs that you still feel that kind of twinge, like, I'm not ready to face that again. And you'll know when you're ready. Right.
Yeah,
And
totally.
simultaneously taking the invitation to maybe push past your edge a little bit. And if you have some time and space to sit with those songs and just ask, like, what is coming up for me right now, and what
Mm.
piece of my healing might actually be there for me to face.
Yeah, and that's why I think, again, those triggers are good if you could look them. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this person said something and it made me mad. And before you reach out, just practice why. What's going
Yeah.
on inside of me, like, and it's, I think it's such a good place
Mm-hmm.
to start understanding yourself better, because like I said, I think most of us, and you agree probably, we just go through life and all of a sudden it's just like, it's a lot different than we thought, or things that, and you just start peeling back the layers, and it gets overwhelming at first because you're like, oh, and then you're like, no, let's just close that Pandora's box. Not ready yet, but
Yeah.
you can, like, pick it, not pick and choose, but you really can, you can pick an area of your life that maybe you want to improve, and you just start there. You, like, I find it's just like with diet and
Mm-hmm.
exercise, when people want to change that, they're like, I gotta do everything at once, and you're like, actually, you fucking
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
It's actually better if you don't,
Yeah.
and start small. Like for
Yeah.
me, I never ate greens, so I just started putting spinach in a shake.
Yeah.
And now, 10 years later, I could grab a hand. I mean, I don't want to grab a handful of spinach and put it in my mouth and eat it, but I could
Yeah.
without throwing up, But like, again, I
Yeah.
always had this idea like, well, I got to be a bikini competitor to work out in a gym and be able to do that stuff and bodybuild and
Mm-hmm.
eat. And it's like, no. And then, like, you get, so we go through all of this. So, say I'm just deciding, hey, I want to dive into finding my purpose and my spirituality. I want to be more in tune with it. I believe in God. I have my beliefs. That's fine. But I want to
Mm-hmm.
know myself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you said, spirituality, more looking inside. Let's start with some modalities that are like kind of common, and, like, again, spirituality for dummies. So let's start with one. When people say that they're going to meditate,
Yeah.
what, on, again, I know these are big ass questions, but just to kind of like high level, what would someone say is meditating, and what would one get out of it? Let's say,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word.
I love this question, and I love speaking about meditation, because I think, from my observation, that
Mm-hmm.
Western society really butchers what meditation is, and or slash should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
we are often told that meditation is sitting cross-legged in what you call easy pose with your hands in Gyan Mudra, so your thumb and your pointer finger touching, eyes closed down and in total silence. And then you're supposed to totally silence the mind. Okay. That is kind of the Western egoic new age spirituality definition of meditation, depending on who you learn from.
And I'm sorry not to cut you off, but I will say if I ever talk to anybody, that is exactly why they say they can't meditate, is because
Mm-hmm.
they can't do that. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
carry on.
And
I'm like, don't
so
hold yourself back, please, because that's not it.
yeah. And I mean, for any of us, anytime we say we can't, or, oh, that doesn't work for me, or that's not who I am, that's always an invitation, right? Because that is saying that we're still operating on a story of who
Mhm.
we think we are and what we think we can and can't do. And so we're actually
Good point.
creating a narrative of self limiting beliefs. And so,
Mhm.
in order to train ourselves to push past our boundaries in other areas of our life, it is incredibly powerful to push past those limitations in other facets of being. And
Totally.
so when we look at meditation, and how I teach meditation and how I define meditation is that first and foremost, silencing the mind is not the point. I actually think that if we try to silence the mind, we actually close our channel. And so, what I mean by that is that if you are truly sitting in meditation and you're dropping into those deeper states of brain waves, you are actually becoming a clear and open channel to receive guidance from your ancestors, from your angels, and also your quote unquote higher self or your true self. But if we're sitting there and we are trying so desperately to totally silence the mind, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice because we're going to close that channel and we're not going to
Mhm.
receive the intuitive insights. We're not going to receive the messages that we're meant to receive in that space. And yes, of course, sometimes meditation is more so for just bringing yourself into silence and peace and presence and groundedness. And so maybe in those transient periods of time, just being silent and not really necessarily
Have an answer.
trying to receive messages. And arguably we shouldn't ever be trying to receive something anyways. We should just be open to receiving whatever's meant for us at the time. And sometimes that might be nothing, and sometimes that
Mhm.
might be an abundance of intuitive insight and downloads.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, and that's my first invitation for anybody listening is please don't try and silence your mind. Look at your thoughts more like clouds, if you will. So just let the thoughts come and go through the
Mhm.
mind. And this is the key piece, is not letting yourself give your power away to the energetic of the thought. So when
Mm.
the thought comes in, for example, let's say you're sitting, you're trying to meditate, and all of a sudden your cute little brain's like, "Oh, we got to get groceries." And so
Shut the fuck up. Just kidding.
right, giving power away to that thought would be allowing your brain to then go down the trajectory of, okay, we got to get groceries. When the heck do I have time to get groceries today? Probably around 3 p.m. What do I need for groceries? I need apples, I need bananas, I need avocados, right? Okay, so you're letting the thought actually control your mind. what
Mhm.
what I invite you to do and what I believe meditation truly is that thought comes in and you just simply go, "Oh, thank you, thought. Yep, a little reminder to get groceries later. Beautiful. I have a beautiful brain that has a great memory. Thank you and goodbye." And you just let the thought
Mhm.
go,
Yeah.
right?
Not hold
So,
on to it.
yeah, just letting those thoughts come and go because this just telling you that your brain's operating and that you're a living, existing human being with probably 8 million balls up in the air, like the majority of us nowadays. And your brain's just trying to do what it does best and give you some messages and remind you of things. So to see that with graciousness instead of judgment. So
Mhm.
meditation invites us to come out of the inner judge and the inner critic and to be able to sit and go, "Oh God, my foot's going asleep. That's okay. Oh God, these thoughts are coming in. That's okay. I love my brain. I love my body. And I'm going to sit here
Yes.
for as long as feels nourishing for me."
Yeah.
So then also, I mean, I do love to sit for my meditations, and ideally, I love to be in nature. However, meditation also does not have to be sitting in easy pose. First of all, if you want
Mhm.
to sit, you can sit on a chair, you can lay down and meditate, you can do whatever feels good for you. You can also meditate while you're walking. Like, take that little light box EMF distributor out of your hands in your pocket and put it away for a little while and go be in nature and just walk and admire the clouds, admire the trees, be with your body and let yourself actually feel whatever emotions are coming up for you at that time. That is walking meditation, and that is beautiful. Meditation can also be accessed sometimes when we are in flow state, right? Like sometimes when we're doing art, I
Yeah.
very often enter a meditative state if I'm playing the keyboard or
Mm.
if I am drawing or doodling or writing poetry, right? Everything else in the world just melts away, and I'm just there in that moment doing whatever I am doing, right? And so the more we can meditate in silence typically, or meditate, I mean, I often encourage people to meditate with music too, because music
Mhm.
often allows us to just be present in the moment.
Yep.
And music, as we already have shared, that neural nostalgia, that has potent power to bring up emotions and memories that are meant for us to witness and to sit with and to move through at that time. So meditation does not have to be in silence either, but the more we can sit in stillness and in silence and just be the observer instead of the judge of those thoughts and everything happening in the external world, the more apt we are to be able to tap into flow state so that we
Mhm.
can do our work without distraction. We get in those vibes where we're like, oh my goodness, I have so many ideas for content or projects or leadership. Like, I am going to show up as my best self. I'm going to write the most beautiful piano piece today. I'm going to write the most beautiful poetry. I'm going to create whatever, like whatever your goals and desires are. When we can tap into flow state, that is where our greatest power resides, because literally everything else just absolves. Time almost ceases to
Doesn't
exist,
exist.
which
Yeah.
basically, I mean, I do think it ceases to exist, because I think time is also just kind of a figment of our imagination in some way, shape, and
Absolutely.
form.
Yes. Yeah.
um so meditation will translate into all other areas of our life. So if you're
Mhm.
starting, or if you've tried before and you've said, fuck it, meditation isn't for me, I'm frustrated, I can't silence my mind, or I can't sit still, it is an invitation to be with the discomfort and to not judge yourself for the ways that you think that you're doing it wrong. So let the
Mhm.
thoughts come in and go. Let your body move and shift and adjust in your position if you need to. And over time, it's like anything, like training our muscles in the gym. Overnight, you just don't all of a sudden deadlift 300 pounds.
No.
It is gradual, it's incremental, and there are also ebbs and flows and waves to it. So let yourself step into that discomfort and see what's there for you.
Totally. And it's a called like that's why I always like to look back at these things are called practices because
Yes.
that's what you're
Yes.
doing with it. You practice them and to that
Yes.
point like you will always practice them because you're not practicing to it's not like an education. I
Yeah.
find spirituality to me is like you said like you had that moment we all have been there where it's like more mine was like conspiracy theorists as opposed to like that realm because I'm not in any spiritual realm as a learning, but I was like, I know everything about every conspiracy theory on planet Earth. Try me, bitch. I have the biggest tinfoil hat. And then I got schooled on a few things, and I was like, well, that's a lesson to my ego. So
Yeah.
now I'm like, well, I read this thing that could make sense, but I don't know if it's true. You guys decide. I'm just giving you
Yeah.
the nuggets. You eat it or throw it in the garbage. But I think it's such a beautiful thing to see those moments and to have them. I
Yeah.
think we all need them in grace. And that was me when I first started meditating. And guys, like I only do 10 minutes a day because that's just what fits in my life right now. And I can do it every day. So what I would do is like try to sit down for like half an hour and like make the area perfect and no one could disrupt me. And if I thought about anything else, I was like, you're an idiot. Focus. Why can't you focus? Well, you're a fucking dumbass. Just focus on the words. Why
Yeah.
are you sitting here arguing with yourself when you should be focusing on what this bitch is saying? And then I just give up, right? And
Yeah.
then I was like, okay, hold on. Just like everything, you're trying to be a fucking monk and
Yeah.
really you just need to sit for 5 goddamn seconds. So I started with 5-minute guided meditations on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it changed my life because of the prompts and how she would say it like,
Mm.
whatever
Mm-hmm.
comes up, it's
Yeah.
okay. bring yourself back when you can. And then I would do the same thing. I'd be like, okay, when I get to work today, I have to do this. And I'd be like, and you can think about that when you're done here. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What did she just say? Stay focused. So for me, I love that you said that meditating is a different thing, because sometimes I feel like I can do that in the shower. I
Yeah.
got the hot, like hell's heat on my body, and it is just burning the negativity away from me of the day, of all the bullshit. And I just sit there and like either I have music on or I just sit with my thoughts. Like, what was good
Mm-hmm.
about today? What wasn't? And I think that's how you could just start, is just by being present and checking in with you and being like, what's going on in here, and listening to what you're actually saying.
Yeah.
Start there if you need to, whether that's in the car while you're driving or sitting out in nature or lying in bed when you first wake up. Maybe don't grab your phone. Maybe for 5 minutes, set an intention with the day. Just whatever it is, I think it's just being present with yourself in the moment and like grounding yourself. And then you can start adding all the other things. Maybe you want to unlock different levels of your understanding of yourself. Then you can maybe start doing some more guided ones, or maybe you go on an experience, like
Yeah.
this, like the services that you offer. So you're speaking of like waking up and having these different feelings. So what are other services that you offer others? So obviously like meditating, what other ways could people maybe tap into being a little bit more spiritual?
Yeah, absolutely. So breath work is another big one that I am just ecstatic about, because first and foremost, the breath, like dance, is available to almost every single one of us who are blessed with working healthy lungs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the breath is free. We can access the breath in any moment of any day. And once you have a basic knowledge and awareness of some breath techniques and patterns that work for you, and some that you can apply to different aspects of being, so like breathing for sleeping, breathing for invigorating and rejuvenating your life force energy and your prana, and breath to like really focus you. Once you have kind of a handful of those, you are set, right? And so these are the things, like teaching people how to actually meditate in a way that works for them, teaching people how to actually breathe. And when I say breathe, I also mean belly breathing, because it's
That
so
was new.
interesting. Yeah,
I
I
learned
mean,
that. I was like, hey, I thought I knew about breathing. I'm a cardio bunny. I taught jump fitness. Like, what are you talking about? I know how to fucking breathe. No, I don't.
yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't.
And I mean, we're not taught, right? Like it's an
Mm.
innate bodily function. And so we aren't taught it in school. But honestly, we would be living in an entirely different world if in school we were taught meditation and breath work. I don't
And
think we would
given some
have war.
space.
I don't think we would have government. I don't think that we would have half of the conflict, probably 99% of the conflict that we have
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
so the breath is something I'm very passionate about teaching. And I weave breathwork and meditation into my mentorship. So
Mm-hmm.
anybody who does a full mentorship program with me, we do those on our calls. We do breathwork, we do meditation, we do guided visualizations, we do inner child regressions, we do past life regressions, we do energy work, we do, if you live near me, we do body work. Um, and then the other things that I came back to is movement that is nourishing for you. So a big piece of what I teach is somatic experiencing and somatic work, right? So breath work plays a role in that. So does dance. But really allowing the physical body to process trauma, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, and this is why talk therapy can only take you so far, in my humble opinion. And this is why so many clients come to me and they say, well, I've been in talk therapy for 13 years and I feel like I'm the same person that walked in that door, is because very commonly talk therapy keeps you in a trauma loop,
Mm-hmm.
because it keeps you talking about the same things. And sometimes intellectually you may develop a better understanding and you may be able to let out some emotions. But what is typically not happening in talk therapy is you are typically not somatically processing and experiencing it in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a big, big piece that I now weave into my mentorship. My mentorship program now, especially for those who are local to where I am, and I also say local loosely because I'm the
I was gonna
biggest
say,
gypsy.
lady,
I'm
local to
like
fucking
literally
where?
like,
Like, what is technically home base, girly?
yeah, I
Like,
know.
I was like, is she gonna be back in time for our podcast? And I was like, no, I know she will be, but like,
Don't tempt me with a
your
good time.
car?
I will be
You
on
mean? Yeah,
plane
wherever your
or
fucking
in my
car
car.
is.
Yeah. So my car has a bed in it for anybody who's listening, and I just go wherever the wind blows me.
I
So
love it.
anyways, circling back, the somatic work, if I can do that in person with somebody, that's ideal. Otherwise, I teach people how to do that themselves. And I also have a beautiful community now and so many resources from the people that I have connected with to say, oh, you live in LA? Well, here's a
Yes,
beautiful
yes.
somatic practitioner who lives there. Or, oh, you're in the UK. Okay, well, I know a friend who's living there right now, and I'm going to reach out to her and we're going to get you
Heck
sorted
yeah.
with some people who are doing this work there, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like it's all about resources. And my goal with any individual that I work with is not for them to continue coming back to me. And I know that maybe that sounds backwards from a business perspective, but I want every single person who works with me to one day get to a point where they say, amazing. I've so enjoyed this and I have grown and I have become a totally different version of myself. And I'm now living my life of passion and purpose. And I feel like I now have all the tools in my toolbox
Mhm.
to carry on. And I
Yeah.
don't need these calls. I don't need these sessions. I don't need the plant medicine. I don't need this anymore because the stuff that I do need on a daily basis, I know how to do it myself. And the rest is going to unfold organically. I believe we should all have a mentor, right?
Yes.
But my mentorship will align for some people in certain chapters of their life and their path. And then
Mhm.
my hope is that they move on to a different mentor, right? And
Mhm.
I have a mentor who I hope and aspire to be more like one day. And his
Yep.
teachings are teachings that I am integrating and embodying into my own practices and my own being so that I can then teach at that level soon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's just
Yeah.
continuous growth and evolution.
I did this training once, and the one thing that I biggest thing that I took out of it was you should always have someone above you and someone below you. So you should always be learning from someone, and
And
then at the same
teaching.
time you should always be teaching someone. That
Mm-hmm.
could be your children, somebody at work, it could be your spouse, it could be wherever you're teaching, but it's
Yeah.
like that's like the beauty of life is like, and that's I think that's why you have kids and people always listen to
Yeah.
their ancestors, and it's so sad now that we don't sit and listen to our grandparents talk anymore. If anything, they're not really even being listened to, and or maybe they're having a
Yeah.
phone call or a text or social media post, and like we used to sit and listen and
Mm-hmm.
learn from them and then pass that down, and it's like you can do that in so many different ways of your lives. That's why I love having people on the show, because I always learn something, and
Yeah.
then I hope that they always either learn something from me or about themselves being on the show.
Yeah.
And I just always like that. So in my personal life, I'll always look and be like my boss, like I look up to him in so many different ways. And then when at work, I also have someone that I will share that knowledge with, and like share that. And I do
Mm-hmm.
want to circle around one thing if we can a little bit, because this is something
Yeah.
that I have to work with quite a bit.
Absolutely.
And I go back and forth with it. So I work in corporate, and
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's always these conversations about, and to your point earlier, like everyone's working for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hold a lot of guilt and shame around that, because I truly actually enjoy my job, and I
Mm-hmm.
actually do like that I get to leave at the end of the day and I don't have to deal with like owning a company.
Yeah.
And I'm no way in a space where I feel like for sure the podcast is not making me money, and that's not the point of it anyways. But like
Mm-hmm.
financially, like I feel supported, I feel good, and I don't feel like I'm necessarily like working for someone else, because I feel generally
Yeah.
fulfilled in my job and or through the podcast or the other things that I'm doing. Is
Yeah.
that then something, when people are saying that like you're working for somebody else and you should just be working for yourself, is that something that we should then, like, do you think, in your opinion, then like quit our jobs and like find that? Or is it like cool to continue working as you are if you're happy and you don't feel drained, you don't feel misaligned? Because I feel very aligned and very
Mm-hmm.
excited for my future and my career, but I always struggle with this where everyone says don't work for somebody else. And
Yeah.
so can you help me work through that a little bit? Like, is that, am I taking that the wrong way? Like, am I all of a sudden going to wake up one day and be like, this is what I'm going to do for a business, and I am like quitting my corporate job? Like, I always feel guilt and holding shame about liking my corporate job, if that
Yeah.
makes
So,
sense.
I mean, you already loosely answered a lot of the questions that I would reflect back to you. So, like the
Of course.
first being, does it feel aligned for this version of you? So, the Brandy
Yes.
that is sitting in front of me right here, right now, this emanation of you in this chapter of your life, does it feel aligned?
Yes.
Okay.
Good
And
questions.
if it feels aligned for you,
Yes.
All of those other opinions that are coming at you should just acknowledge that those are other people's projections of their truth, of their desires. And most often they come from love, right?
Of
Most often they're
course. Of
probably
course.
people who are entrepreneurs and who are loving their path and who are like, oh my God, you're still controlled by like big corporate. And I just want you to live a life of freedom, right? And so there's probably good intention at the bottom of it. But at the end
Of
of the
course.
day, do those opinions matter if you are living a life that is aligned with your soul and your values and your desires,
Fair. For the
right?
most part, I would say, because like you can't control the company fully if it's not yours, like
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's some things like when it comes to corporate world, but I haven't found that one thing that like I do a lot of things. I feel like I'm a jack of all trades.
Yeah,
So it's like I don't ever just want to do one thing. So it's like I have my corporate job because that satisfies. I do think I'm making a difference. And it's like,
absolutely.
it's in cannabis. So that is something that if you've known me for a long time, I'm a
Yeah.
huge advocate for in all different ways. So I even got suspended when I was like in high school for smoking it. And I wish I could go back and be like, girl, that's okay. It's going to be you're fucking putting food on your family's table
Yeah.
in your future. But I do feel like I'm a part of something huge. I'm a part of a new industry. I have a job that no one has in Canada. Well, for the most part, like loosely say that, but for the most part, no one does. And I always go through this where I'm self evaluating. So I'm like, am I doing the corporate job, like chasing the
Mm-hmm.
bag and like climbing that corporate ladder? And then I have to sit back and go, not anymore. At some point,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but now I'm happy where I am. I love what I do, and it's and so I do self reflect, and so thank you for working through that because I think when we have doubts about things, sometimes we think, okay, then it's not for me, or like, you know what I mean? But I think it's more just making sure that it's still aligned because, as you said, maybe in 5 years that Brandy will be different and she will be maybe
Exactly.
adopting a baby and she'll be in that phase in her life. And maybe and I think that's what I'm trying to work through. It's just like also not being a parent and not being able to, and
Mm-hmm.
like just having that, like, what are you doing with your life? And so I've had all these
Mm-hmm.
questions. And then you get into like people that own their own business, especially in Kelowna, you're fucking full of entrepreneurs around here.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's got like 18 businesses. And so then you're really questioning, like, you hear all these people, and like, no offense, no shade to my MLM ladies, but like, quit your job and corporate sucks and 9 to 5. And I'm like, I work 7 to 3:30 and I love it. I get off work, I get to do all the things. Like, I get to create this whole industry that wasn't there before, changing the stigma about plant medicine in a different way. You could hate corporate and government regulation. That's fine. Take that out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis is viewed at completely different than it was since regulation as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people like me were on the ground floor having these conversations about intention and
Yeah.
care for the plant, and respecting the medicine that it is. And do I love that a government has its dirty fingers in it?
Mm-hmm.
No, but I can't stop that, and I'm going to be in it to try and make it better. So thank you
Yeah.
for working through that. I actually sit at the gym sometimes and I like look around. I'm like, do you motherfuckers know what I do for a job? Like, it's so cool. And no one's asking me why. Like, I
I
get,
love it.
but then I have that like, oh girl, you should feel guilty because you're working for someone else and you're in the matrix and you're everything that the like freedom community and the crunchy community say you shouldn't be. And then I bounce back to myself and I'm like, now you're looking at other people's lenses and their limiting beliefs, maybe, and looking at
Mm-hmm.
them, and you're not looking at you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you happy? Yeah.
Exactly. And
I laugh
that's
at work. I
that's
have a
just
good
it,
time.
right?
And I think
Is
that's it, right?
and those questions to always come back to, like, does it bring me joy in this version of myself? Does it give me a sense of purpose? Because I think when we really look at corporate as a whole and a large majority of people who are working for somebody else, the biggest pieces that are missing are joy and purpose. People are just going and clocking in and sitting at a desk or doing their daily tasks because that's what they've been trained and told to do. But none of that actually feels at the end of the day fulfilling to them. But
Mm-hmm.
you are not experiencing that, right? And I also
Mm-mm.
really want to highlight that yes, we're living in a day and age when, especially for women, we're living in a boss babe culture, right? And so many women, and like, God bless that we have been granted the ability that should always be our divine birthright, but the ability to be CEOs and entrepreneurs and run our own businesses which is a privilege and a gift compared to previous times in history in other areas of the world. And so, just acknowledging that we do live in a society now where it's mainstream to be the owner and operator of your own business, and not all of us are designed that way. That's not all of our soul path. I'm curious, do you know your human design or your gene key?
Um, I I'm pretty sure. So I dove into it like a year and a half ago, and then I completely like got sidetracked. And but I'm pretty sure. I don't want to say it off the top of my head because I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah,
I'll have to
that's
look
okay.
into it and send it to you.
But
But I did pull my
yeah,
chart before, and I have like dove into it, and then it was kind of one of those things where I was like, I need to understand this a little bit more. It felt like a lot, and I wasn't in a financial place to pay someone to help me
mhm,
understand. And it just felt like I was like maybe holding on to things that I didn't understand, and I felt a little too uneducated about it. So I didn't want to
yeah,
like. Do you know? Does that make sense? Where it's like I think this makes
absolutely.
sense, but maybe
Yeah.
I'm understanding this wrong. So I don't want to be like I'm a master generator and I do this, that, and the other. When I'm like, girl, you don't even know what that fucking means. Shut up. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. I
So,
want to say I'm either a manifestor or a generator, and I at this moment cannot quite remember.
yeah, and again, these are all things, so like these are all tools in the toolbox. Anybody listening, I'm not saying that your human design is going to tell you your soul path or what to do in
No.
life, nor is your astrological sign, your sun, your moon, all of these things, but all of them, and I'm most well versed in gene keys. I will say, like,
Mhm.
I'm not a human design expert. However, I can definitely refer you to people who are very well versed in human
Yes,
design
amazing.
and also astrology, all of these things. But they're all just pieces that can contribute valuable information to who we are and what helps us to thrive. And then also
Mhm.
getting to know ourselves and doing the deep healing work and meditating and all of these practices to come back to that sense of who we truly are so that we can actually answer those questions for ourselves, and recognizing that any part of us that is still seeking that validation from the external world of like, oh, like why can't people just accept that I'm living a corporate job, or is it
Mhm.
wrong that I'm working a corporate job, or all of these questions and judgments and insecurities, they stem from a part of ourself, usually from childhood, that is still
Mhm.
unhealed, right? So
Mhm.
it's an invitation to look there and say, where did this originate?
Mhm.
This judgment of myself and this seeking of others to accept me for who I am in this present version of me. So there's very likely a memory or a set of memories for you
Mhm.
where little Brandy just wanted to show up as the full, true, authentic version of herself. And that version of you was met with criticism or shame or judgment, or simply not met.
Mhm.
You were not met with love and
Mhm.
appreciation and wholeheartedness. And so there's part of you there that's still seeking that by trying to validate to other people that your corporate job is for you. Nobody
Mhm.
else needs to
We'll know
know
that.
that your corporate
Yeah.
job is aligned for you. If it's aligned for you,
Yes.
it's aligned for you, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or says about that.
Good point. I think I'll probably attach it to daddy issues, not to be
Mm,
a
yeah.
basic one. But if you think about corporate, most people think it's all male dominated. It's just
Mm-hmm.
for men. It's only men, which, yeah, big part of it. Sure. Get
Mm,
it.
yeah.
Totally get it. So there's definitely been a lot of work for myself understanding, am I doing this to be a good employee, or am I trying to seek validation from a man
Mm,
that is quote unquote authoritative to me? So
yeah.
there's been a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah.
And in the past, 100% current job, that is not the leaders that I have in front of me. They're so
Yeah.
respectful. They put women up here. Women are queens. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, that's where I speak out about it, being like, I totally, and I'm not invalidating any woman's experience in corporate world. I am going to share mine because it's in contrast to other people, to
Mm,
understand that it's not always, and I'm not saying yours isn't, but mine isn't. Like I go into a meeting, like I get excited. People tell me they get excited when they see my name on a meeting because they're like, "Oh,
aw,
Brandy's here," or they, my name has value at work. It's
yeah.
like, "Oh, Brandy's on it. She's on it." Like, you know
Mm,
what I mean? And like, I feel good. I love knowing that my name has, I stick to my word. And that's where I've developed so many morals and understanding of myself and understanding the world and understanding
Mm-hmm.
not taking things personally. Like there's so many lessons that I've learned in the corporate world, good, bad, or the other,
Yeah.
that I think now have reflected me to put me in a position that it highlights all of my good things and it shows me where I can improve, and the people above me generally care, and that makes a huge
Mm-hmm.
difference, right? Because if you're not being cared for in corporate, it is disgustingly dark. So I totally get it. But maybe
Absolutely.
it's cannabis. Maybe because we work in weed and like it's very lighthearted. Like we'd say Alaskan thunderfuck in corporate meetings, like how serious. Like I'll show up to work and I'm like, oh my God, I smell so much weed. And I'm like, do I have it on me? Like, did I smoke it this morning? And I'm like, oh, they're extracting in the building beside me. And we've got like, hundreds of thousands of products and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But, it's such a good point that like coming back to, does it feel good for you? And don't worry about the noises. And if you are starting to take those noises and those opinions, to your point, why? Was it because
Mm-hmm.
that happened when you were younger? And so okay, so say it's because I had a not a good father, not a present father, and I've always looked for that validation and appreciation
Mm-hmm.
and respect from males. So I
Mm-hmm.
chased that in relationships. Avi married the wrong person. No
Yeah.
offense, Steve. Hope you're happy. Now I'm marrying the right person that treats me completely different because I understand it differently
Yeah.
now. I didn't look for
Absolutely.
Grant's validation. I looked for him to highlight my life and look at me like queen and king. That's what I was looking for. So at work, I would notice that too, right? I
Mm-hmm.
was chasing the assholes to validate me. And now it's like I
Yeah.
just went to work and I showed up and I was like a better version of myself. And I didn't
Yeah.
search for it. I just let my work speak for itself. And then I worked my way up strictly from working and being myself as opposed to doing what the corporate ladder wanted me to do. And I feel more successful in that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think so. I have that. I understand that. I'm not searching from that from my current bosses. We're working together on my growth and development as a human, as a corporate person, as a worker. How do I now go forward? Do I then to fix it when these, so I guess that would go into, is that like limiting beliefs of what I think I should be? Like what's my next step to kind of like, I got the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
How do I get it out?
It's a
You
great
know?
question.
Take it
So
out, Sarah.
So you're referring specifically to these, like the attachment that you have to other people's opinions about you being in corporate?
Yeah, sure. Just like when you've come to the realization that like this is something, like how would you start to stop doing that? Let's say specifically right now because it's me searching that validation, but like you have an awareness to something that you want to change. What are steps that you can do to start like maybe repattering your brain? Is that the key to
Mm-hmm.
stop the thoughts, be
Yeah.
aware of them? Is that where we
So
start?
awareness, yes, awareness is first step, action is second. So the kind of like part B to the awareness piece that I would say is get extremely clear, like
Okay.
expand that awareness. So like, why do those opinions feel like they matter to you? What do those opinions bring up in you when you hear them? What memories are attached to those opinions, right? And so, like, when we talk about the childhood memories, especially, that is stuff that can be really potent to work through with somatic work or inner child regressions. Even like working just simply with microdosing when you're sitting with those emotions and those thoughts, right? Again, plant medicine, not for everybody, can be a potent tool. Um, so once you are very, very clear on like, okay, what are the opinions that trigger me? Why do they trigger me? What emotions do they bring up? Also, then where do you feel that in your body?
Mm, okay.
Then you can also start to structure some breathwork and movement practices around releasing that somatically from the body in the areas that you feel. And then the action piece, in addition to like bringing that into practice in somatic forms, is taking action. So, like, actually now practicing in scenarios when somebody projects that opinion on you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can I invite myself into a pause in this moment so that I'm not going to react or respond? I'm just going to acknowledge that this person has shared a projection with me.
Mm-hmm.
Can I, in this moment, respond in a different way than former Brandy would have?
Mm,
And
okay.
sometimes we're not going to. Sometimes we're going to
Yeah.
get triggered as fuck and we're going to show up exactly the same way. And then that
That's okay
adds
too.
to the awareness, right?
Yeah.
That's not a
You're like, ah, shit, I
failure.
did it again. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not a failure. It's
No.
just, okay, wow, that is still a piece for me that's triggering and I'm still showing up in the same way. So there's still other things I can get curious about as to practices and clarity and all of these pieces here that I can begin to transmute this in a different way, because clearly whatever I've been trying to do hasn't been working, right? And so this
Mm-hmm.
is where it's just like trial and error and practicing over and over and over and over again, because the taking action piece, that is where we rewrite the neural program. So like those
Mm-hmm.
moments where instead of responding and immediately it,
Projecting.
validating yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
responding to that person and saying, well, but corporate serves me in this way and I get to do this and blah, 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 and going on this
Yep.
tangent of why
Yep.
corporate is actually aligned for you, pausing
Mm-hmm.
and maybe just saying, thanks for your insight. I really appreciate that you actually took the time to share your perspective about corporate. I actually love my
Mm-hmm.
job right now, but thanks for bringing this into the conversation, right?
Yep.
Like just
You don't have to
having
do
a
more.
different conversation, or
Mm-hmm.
even like maybe it's a text message or an email or a comment on social media, and just being like, okay, cool, like this is this person's opinion, that's okay, right?
Yep.
Instead of responding or instead of like really taking that to its depth.
Mm-hmm.
So just practicing showing up in different ways and allowing yourself to move through the emotions with it. And over time, those neural patterns and the way that you show up will organically shift as a whole, but it takes practice as with anything else.
Totally. I think one analogy I kind of heard one time, and I also will put this to Terry Fox, not the Canadian runner, guys, and we've gone over this a few times. Those I've seen the episodes with Terry Fox. He's an acupuncturist in Denver,
Okay.
and so he talks about like chi and energy, and like he talks about it kind of like it's flowing, and then there's a place that's blocking it, and that's where they go to attack to let that
Yeah.
blockage kind of go through. And he was kind of talking about it like a garden, and like watering your garden and having like it flowing through. And I think for me, the way it made me think about changing patterns in my head was thinking about it as a rut, right? So I've been running this path of, let's just say, I'm not good enough. Let's just, as a basic. And I've
Mm-hmm.
just beat that down for 30 years. And that rut, I've run it so hard, it's like this deep now, right?
Yeah.
Like, same with like bad eating habits or good eating habits,
Yeah.
putting on weight, losing weight. It takes time, right? It adds up. So then when you're going to fix that pattern and you've been running this path, now you're starting to try and take this path like this. There's a good chance you're just going to fall back into this sometimes, and you have to just keep
Mm-hmm.
going until this rut, or even maybe you're not a rut, maybe you're just sprinkling some dirt in that rut and
Yeah.
you're trying to fix that, right? And so it's going to take time. How long you visually, I know you guys can't see me, but I'm pointing down. How long did you dig that rut? How long have you been telling yourself that story, that narrative, that limiting belief? You got to have grace of how long it's going to take for you to repair that in
Yeah.
fitness and your mind. And so that's how I visually, like, how long have I been telling myself I'm a loser? Let's just say,
Mm.
well, I'm going to have to go back and do it at least that many times or more. Not saying that for sure, but
Yeah.
having grace of like, you're not going to be able to fill that rut overnight with sometimes one thing. Sometimes you need friends and you need a good
Mm-hmm.
community to be the ones there, and you need a little bit of pause and you need a little bit of self-reflection. But if you're like, I've got no problems, nothing's wrong with me, I'm carrying on with life, or I don't want to look into it, then it's probably your rut's just gonna get harder. Teach an old
Yeah.
dog new tricks. That dog's been going on that path for 30 years. It's going
Yeah.
to take some time, but it can, because you can build new neural, not even like in a scientific point, like, right, you can
Mm-hmm.
build new pathways. You can
Absolutely.
recreate that, but practice. And that's what people get pissed off, and they're like, I'm
Yeah.
not perfect right away. Well, joke's on you, you're not going to be perfect at it ever, because you're having a good day, the next day something bad happened in your family, and maybe the next day meditation you just can't focus, but you showed up and you tried, and you can come back tomorrow and try to do better, but you still tried, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, grace with yourself, slowing down, not taking it all on at one time. Start with
Mm-hmm.
one modality. If you're like, hey, I really like this, I like Sarah's vibe, I get why Brandy's so in love with her, you know she's got her, certain things. Maybe you just start off with just one live session that you just listen to, or maybe you
Yeah.
just listen to the story. Maybe you just show up to one event. You don't have to become a guru overnight. I don't think nobody
Mm-hmm.
really is. I think anybody that
Mm-hmm.
tells you that they know everything in this space, run
Yeah.
for the hills and
Absolutely.
find people
Absolutely.
that are, for one, it's a good practitioner when they tell you, I don't want you to be here forever. I love
Mm-hmm.
you. I think you're a great person, but I don't want you to be paying for me for the rest of your life. That is not the
Yeah.
point. And someone that's like, I don't know everything. but I am learning and I'm continually learning and I'm going to be honest and I'm
Yeah.
going to do the best that I can with what I know. To me, that is someone that you want to trust yourself in opening up with, because
Mm-hmm.
this is the scary part in this industry is, and my worry is that there's good manipulation at vulnerability,
Oh, 100%.
right? And people are wanting to look for something
Mm-hmm.
different, especially over the last couple of years. They want a better
Yeah.
answer. They want this medicine, this service that I'm getting is not helping me. I just want to take some mushrooms and be a legendary singer or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
like, so sometimes it is a place that I worry that someone opens up, especially in a spiritual realm, of these are all my insecurities. And those bad eggs are like, oh, now I know how I'm going to loop
Yeah.
you in every single time. So
Mm-hmm.
I think, from my personal experience, besides Sarah, obviously, in connecting with the people that vibe like her, is spend some time watching that person, looking at their
Mm-hmm.
testimonials, seeing how they're actually showing up. And if they're like, I have all this good information, but it's in a free thing that you're going to go hear all the time, like, that's a red flag,
Yeah.
So, what are some green flags? Let's just say maybe they can't, afford, or whatever the reasons that we're not picking you, I'm your number one choice. What are some green flags, maybe before we end today, of when you're wanting to start your spiritual journey? What are some red flags we should be looking for people out there to help us?
So you already highlighted a few of them, and I'll kind of reiterate in my own words just for emphasis because this is such an important topic. And yeah, as you alluded to, traumatized people are easily manipulated. And that is tragic to me. And I have so many people come to me saying that, oh, yeah, I ended up in a cult. Or, yeah, I went on a plant medicine ceremonial retreat and I got sexually abused. Like, the amount of sexual abuse that is in the plant medicine space is astronomical and appalling. And it makes my heart sink to know that there are people professing themselves to be shamans and medicine men and medicine women and healers who are then getting people into these spaces who are deeply traumatized and deeply vulnerable and so willing to trust somebody else.
Yes.
And then they put them in an altered state of consciousness and they deepen their trauma instead of eradicating it. And so,
It's fucked.
red
Sorry.
flags.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
red
I've heard that a
flags.
couple times and I was just like, "Oh, I'm not sure I'm ready to go down that hole yet." Not like that, but you know what I mean. It's just like,
No pun
that's
intended.
no pun
Oh god,
intended,
not
but
not a good joke, but yeah.
it's a dark hole. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry. Sometimes you have to, but it's
Yeah.
just one of those ones where, again, it's like people are looking, especially because the allopathic medicine in the last couple years, we won't get into
Mhm.
that, has really turned people's, and so they run over here. And people with good vibes, good cult leaders, are usually very charismatic,
Yeah.
and so you have to,
So
yeah, be careful.
red flag is, yeah, anyone who says like this is the way, this is the solution, this is what you need to do. I would highly encourage anybody listening who's looking for a new mentor, a new practitioner, a guide, whatever you want to call it, to get to know them first, like Brandy said. So, like, follow them on social media, read through their profile, read testimonials. Testimonials are huge. Um, and if they offer what I call for myself a discovery call, do that, because I also believe that you really need to feel into somebody's energy. Like, I would never sit in ceremony with anybody that I hadn't had at least a FaceTime call with, and usually met in person and felt their energy and kind of gotten a better judge of their character.
Mhm.
So make a conscious effort to interact with them and see just how they feel and how they show up, how they speak, what their languaging is like.
Mhm.
And another red flag, again, is this need to always come back, right? So, like, okay, well, you finished course 1, so now you have to move on to course 2, or you finish mentorship program A, so now the next step is mentorship program B, right? So
Mhm.
anything that keeps you in this state of, oh, I need this, and oh, this is the next thing for me, again, a massive red flag. And then
Scientology 101 right there. Like,
yeah,
right? It's like, how many levels? Like, did you beat all of them? What level are you in Candy Crush now? Like, are you there
yeah,
yet? Like, have you, it's not a game where you just reach a level of like, yes, obviously you learn more, but it's it's putting it as a business model in spirituality when it's just like you could be eons ahead in this lesson and very behind in this one, not behind, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
everyone learns their lessons at different times. Like you said, is no one's necessarily smarter than the other. Everyone just has different understanding and knowledge in different areas. That's why we
Hmm.
share, right? So big red flag, like you said, language. If it's
Yeah.
like, I have all this information in these things and I'm never sharing anything to help,
Hmm.
you might be financially focused, and that's
Yeah.
fine if that's what you want to be and that aligns to you and you just want to pay your money. But like, I want to feel connection with the person. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
just give you my money. I want to give you the good energy and I want you to feel like you're making a difference in my life. Like, that's
Hmm.
what, yes, the money's there, but it's the energy exchange, it's the help, it's the fulfilling of the purpose that true coaches feel like. So to me,
Yeah.
those are the ones you go for, not the ones that are just like, well, we can make you $10,000 a month. It's like,
Hmm.
isn't fitness and wealth supposed to be for helping people? But I guess go make your bag, sweetie.
Hmm.
No
Yeah,
shade.
absolutely. The other thing that I would just encourage people is to really look at the person. So I'm going to say two things here: credentials and experience, because I think sometimes we can put too much of a weight on credentials and titles, because you can have a heck of a lot of knowledge. You can have taken an immense amount of courses, read a lot of books, gone to a lot of seminars. But if you're not actually putting that into practice and living as the embodiment of that, that all means absolute shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Good point.
credentials, yes, especially when it comes to trauma work. So, I do a lot of trauma and addictions work, and that is something that I really endeavored to learn as much about as humanly possible, because I've had certain addictions, let's say addiction to over exercising, addiction to food when I had an eating disorder, binge eating, and bulimia, but I've never personally had a substance addiction. So, how in the heck could I ever relate to and help someone navigate a substance addiction without having actually studied that in depth and worked with people, coaches and mentors and guides who have navigated those realms for years, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that I would have anywhere near the amount of reverence and ability to do that without having done that training. And trauma,
Totally.
again, a lot of life coaches and guides and spiritual individuals slap this label of being trauma informed beside their name, because they think that because they've navigated their own trauma that they're trauma informed, or because they've helped a handful of people navigate trauma that they're trauma informed. Trauma is so vast and so in depth, and it's ongoing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always training and taking new courses and going to seminars and learning from mentors and guides in the realm of trauma, because trauma is so vast and so deep and
So
there's so
big.
many layers to it. And so
It's a big onion.
I would really just get curious about, okay, like what is your training in this? What kind of experience do you have with this? And I mean, for myself, if somebody comes to me with certain things that I'm like, oh, well, I've done some training in this, but I don't actually feel like this is my forte,
Mm-hmm.
a good spiritual practitioner or guide or mentor of any sort is also going to be like, here's somebody I actually think is the better fit for you.
Yes, absolutely. It's not like holding on to everyone as if you're not gonna, and I think that's like probably a limited belief, like thought of like I have to hold on to every single client. But it's like,
Yeah.
no, you should be holding on to the ones that are meant for you and aligned for you, because it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
work. You might get some money, but it's not going to feel good, or something's going to happen. So,
Yeah.
or to your point, you're putting someone in danger, and
Yeah.
people's like can be very fragile, and you could push them over the edge with the wrong advice. Like,
Yeah.
so I completely agree. Yeah, not everything is credentials. I've completely agree. I've learned everything by experience. I made my way
Yeah.
up the corporate chain by working and
Yeah.
getting my experience. But, I would like my surgeon to have gone to school. There's times where, credentials and those things do
Mm-hmm.
matter. And it's, again, did
Absolutely.
you just take the course? Do you just say like, I'm going to throw shade here. I'm just going to have a tea for a second for the people that like do one bikini competition and then all of a sudden now they're personal training
Yeah.
other women in bikini competitions,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you hear from like real coaches, like I have quite a few of them in my life, as I'm sure that you
Mm-hmm.
do. All they hear about is those clients going to those people, crashing their hormones, putting
Yeah.
them at risk, and then
Yeah.
them having years to go back from their body dysmorphia, coach dysmorphia, like
Yeah.
all of that, all because someone thought like, well, I placed her, I went and I did, and I have this
Yeah.
experience, therefore I can teach others. And it's like, okay, it's not
Mhm.
against the law, so
Yeah.
technically, but like spiritually, purposefully, like
Mhm.
what are you doing that for? Are you doing it to me? Then you're doing it for the gram and for the popularity. Because if that was truly aligned to you, you would be going in and you'd be maybe not going to school, but taking courses and doing more and understanding. That's what happened to me. I used to teach Zumba, so I got my Zumba cert.
Mhm.
Another whole limiting belief that we'll talk on the side about. I got that, and then I did my boot campers, like fitness, and it was just the weekend to do boot camps. And immediately then I was like, I'm not doing their personal training course. I'm not doing anything further
Mhm.
than that. This is so much more in depth than what they're going to be able to teach me over a weekend or two.
Mhm.
I'm good with like, let's dance and shake our shit and have fun. Nothing like major fitness that's going to put you in jeopardy.
Mhm.
But there's people with even less that have been like, oh, I've been training for like 5 years. So I'm just going to train other people because I train more than them. So they think I'm an expert, but I don't understand everything else. The
Mhm.
nutrition, the sleep, all of that is very dangerous.
Mhm.
And so to your point, I think, yeah, credentials not always, to certain degrees at certain times, depending on how deep you're going. You're just going to a
Mhm.
dance class. I don't think I need to do my like PT. We're just going to shake our titties and twerk our butts. Okay. We're just
Yeah.
here to have a good time. We're just energy filling. We're not building a core or doing that. You're going to go to a deeper level of understanding and
Mhm.
training to get that. And I think some people just want to skip up here. And I'm sure you've seen that when you
Yeah.
were in the fitness industry or like, heavy into your fitness, like you said,
Absolutely.
dysmorphia.
Yeah,
That's scary.
it's potent. It's very prevalent in the fitness industry, and it very much so parallels the plant medicine industry right now. Is that so many people go and do a mushroom journey, and then they're like, I'm gonna serve mushrooms now, or I'm gonna go and sit with ayahuasca in the jungle, and then I'm gonna take a 3 day course, and then I'm gonna slap shaman in front of my name, and I'm gonna serve ayahuasca, and that is like honestly, for those of you listening, I just want to emphasize the fact that people die
Mm-hmm.
in plant medicine ceremonies when the space is not held by somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And spirituality paints this beautiful picture of everything being light and ethereal and airy fairy and healing your traumas and your past. And not a lot of people talk about the darkness and the entities and the things that happen in ceremony.
That's a
When
good
trauma
point.
comes up, there are
Yes.
practitioners that also have been, they're almost killed by people who are or receiving in ceremony because so much depth of trauma and emotion comes up, and this person is in an almost psychotic state under the influence of this medicine, and then they come at the practitioner with a knife or trying to strangle them. Like, are you prepared for that? Are you prepared
That's such a good
to
point.
extract an entity? Are you prepared to defend your life? Are you prepared to bring somebody back from another realm, from the astral, or to save somebody else's life? Like, this work
Mm-hmm.
is, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and it's not something to tiptoe around the depths of.
Mm-hmm.
These conversations need to be had, and there needs to be a massive level of discernment when you're choosing a facilitator for any of this work.
That's such a good point. And like, you wouldn't necessarily be able to go to like a Google review necessarily for something like this, right? I'm not saying that there should be. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that there should be, but at the same time, like look into it a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
and we could. And I'm not trying to victim shame because you don't fucking know. Sometimes you know with what you know, and sometimes, hey,
Yeah.
maybe that's the experience you need to go through. Like, as long
And
as you're
that's
not hurting
exactly it.
people,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe that is what you like right now. And I'm sure you knew that my Facebook and online got hacked and my identity got completely hacked in January. I'm
Mm-hmm.
still dealing with it. So this person comes and goes on my Facebook. Well, they're back at it again, selling Taylor Swift tickets. Y'all, I don't like Taylor
Hmm.
Swift. I never have. She's the devil to me. So why y'all think I would sell her tickets is beyond. But anyways, it just keeps happening. And then people are in my DMs upset about it. And I was like, what would you like me to
Mm,
do? I
yeah.
have done everything in my abilities to stop this. And I had to sit back and go, well, you know what, B? This is their lesson in online security that they're just having to learn
Yep.
through you. And there's
Exactly.
literally, you have done everything you can do. You've shared it, you've posted it, you've reported it. Facebook doesn't give a fuck. No, like, so here's your lesson. Instead of getting mad at
Mm-hmm.
me for being scammed by this online thing, maybe you should have not been excited that you found Taylor Swift tickets for $300 for front row seats
Mm-hmm.
from somebody you don't know online that you didn't really look into. If you looked into it, you would see that Facebook account's not even friends with my fiance. that's probably a red flag. But people just
Mhm.
get so hyped up, and then and then it's my fault that they got scammed from my hacked account. I'm like, I can't call every single person in all of, like, I had that Facebook for 12 years.
Mhm.
What am I supposed to do? Facebook doesn't care. I report it 3 times a day. They don't do anything. So I had to be like, you can't protect everyone from their lessons,
Yeah,
which I'm sure you probably go through
exactly.
so much as a fucking coach. You have to
Mhm.
just kind of be by them. And same thing with spouses. I think this is where spouses fight, where you want to help, change, do whatever. And you really sometimes, yes, be the partner, but you have to come sometimes sit back and let them go through their own
Mhm.
journey and go through their own lessons and just be there, especially if you've been through it, and with a non judgmental. Like, I know there's so many times in this conversation so far, I've picked out, like, oh, I can see where I can fix that, in like ways where I'm like, these are little flags that even just talking to you, you're not spitting them back at me and saying, Brandy, these are the places that you could probably do those things. But I feel
Yeah.
them from just being around you, and then that excites me to be like, oh, I can't wait till the next time I talk to her, and then I can
Mhm.
see where I'm improving. Like, you're right, I don't need to explain why my corporate job, I love it,
Mhm.
plain and simple. I don't need to. Putting more in there is probably invalidating that little less, which I'm going to look into, but you know what I mean,
Mhm.
like, simplifying stuff sometimes, I think,
Mhm.
is a really good lesson I'm going to take away from this. But
Mhm.
this is amazing talk, Sarah. I knew it would be the
Mhm.
full 2 hours, and I knew we could probably do like another five. But before we go, where can anybody find you? Like on social media, your website? Where can we come to find you? Anywhere,
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
of
So, right
course.
now, the best place to find me is Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Sarah J Con. So, Sarah J for my middle name, Jessica, Con for the beginning of my last name, Connolly. So, Sarah J Con is my Instagram. I also do have an Instagram for my podcast. It's at The Big Little Soul. My podcast is The Big Little Soul podcast if you want to
Yes.
hear more of me speaking. And I will have a new website up and running by the end of summer. I actually just made the biggest investment yet in my business and hired a new VA and marketing team, which was a massive step
That's a big
back
step.
for me
Atta
in
girl.
letting go of control and
Feel
also,
that.
yeah, just trusting that abundance continues to flow when we're acting in alignment with our purpose, right? So
And
for
that's why I
now,
think we need a coach too, right? To
yeah.
remind you of those things, even
Mm-hmm.
like, sometimes we have all the tools,
Yep.
and I have all the things. Like, I know what I need to do. There's just no one holding me to it right now,
Yeah,
except for
accountability
myself,
piece, the
right?
accountability
That's a big
piece is
piece.
huge. And someone to just be that mirror, right? Because
Yeah.
you alluded to the fact that I haven't really necessarily told you to do anything, but those
Nope.
aha moments and those insights have come for you, and that is how I operate as a guide and a mentor. I don't ever actually give advice because I don't believe that's my place. I reflect and I ask
Mhm.
questions and I use kind of like neuro linguistic programming per se to draw people
Yep.
towards insights that might be for them. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's their sovereign choice to say, yes, this feels good for me. No, this doesn't feel good for me. Yes, I'm absolutely going to hold myself radically responsible to doing these practices and to showing
Mhm.
up in this way and to changing these things. And at the end of the day, if that person's life changes, beautiful. If it doesn't, also beautiful because it's just
Mhm.
not meant for them at that time in their path. So,
Yeah, and it's not right or wrong, like you said, you're not, and that's
mm-hmm.
what I love about it, is that you don't have to. It's just it's like a conversation with one of your biggest cheerleaders, and like not a mom, but kind of like maybe your
Yeah.
bigger sister, like that's not quite your mom that's gonna like tell you how to do everything in your life, or not, mom, you didn't do that fully, you let me be,
Yeah.
whatever, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like the bigger sister that's just like, and like hearing it as soon as I said something, and you said that question, I was like, I knew she was gonna ask me that
Mm.
question. Right. So it's like
Yeah.
having that thought, and that's what you do as a coach, is helping people in those moments use those tools, and having almost like a little Sarah in your head being like, what would Sarah say? Or what would she tell me to reflect?
Aw.
Like, and that's
Yeah.
what it is. And that's when I think that you've done good to your coach, is that you can
Yeah.
show them, or your guide or whatever, that you're implementing what they've taught you. Not that you
Mm-hmm.
need them, that you can't live without them. It's that you're actually taking the practices and doing it, or trying at
Yeah.
least, because we can't always be
Absolutely.
perfect. There's some days that, you just want to lie in bed and eat McDonald's. And as much as I hate those days, some days you need them. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's all an experience. And I think the biggest thing coming away from this is not having shame about where you are in that journey, but equally holding yourself accountable that you can change your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so scary and so beautiful all at the same time. And it could be really big. So if that feels big to you, then have a guide, or at least, like I said, follow her on Instagram, because like I said, we've had amazing conversations just from you posting something. And then hopefully that gave something to you too, that like, okay, this is, hitting people where I want it to hit them, or, it is resonating. And the Canada Day story, I hope that brought you right back, because that was like my first year podcasting too. So I was very new in how I was even here. And so it gave me a minute to like think back of who I was even 2 years ago. And I was like, girl, I'm so proud of your growth, not just in that moment, but like, have gratitude, guys. Have grace for yourself. Have curiosity, right? Be curious. Don't be mad at your triggers. Don't be mad at other people for your triggers. Don't get mad at the dentist that you don't floss your teeth, okay? That's like, it's like going to a life coach or a mentor and being like, I'm not doing all these things, it's your fault. No, it's like, I'm showing you, you use the tools or you don't. And I'll show you the ways that I use tools, how you can use these tools. But ultimately, you have to use the tools, and you have to want to use the tools, and you have to be open to the tools. That's a lot of tool talk. It's not Tim the Two Man Taylor. But Sarah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to leave? Any other little nuggets of information you think we hit as much as we could in 2 hours?
I honestly think that we covered a lot of bases. My final words would really just be for everyone listening. I truly, 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 to the depth of my being, I hope that you find your true soul purpose. And I hope that you get to experience this life as a waking existence of magic and miracles, because that is accessible to each and every single one of us. Every single one of us is worthy and deserving and capable of achieving that and of living a life of abundance in all facets of being.
I completely agree. And every time you say that, I'm always like, I just feel like Shania Twain just got turned on. I'm going to kick the fucking door down. Let's go. You see what? There's just some people, and that's why it's important, like you said, to have those conversations, because this is what you should be feeling around the people around you, right?
Yeah.
You're the sum of who the people you surround yourself with. So get into Sarah's life. Follow, obviously, me if you're not already. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you even here? Just kidding. Love you all so much. Sarah, thank you again for your time. Guys, make sure to go follow her. As always, thank you for listening. And until next time, guys, bye. Thank you guys so much for the support. I cannot thank you enough for being here. If you like this episode and you want to hear more, please give me a follow at the Be Real Babe podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Pinterest. You can also find me on Facebook at the Be Real Collective. Until next time, guys, bye.